To call to order the regular City Council meeting for January 22nd, 2018. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call shows that everyone's present this evening. We'll move to approval of the minutes, January 8th, 2018.
I have a couple.
Go ahead, Glenn.
The bottom paragraph, that first line, it says Councilmember Kibble stated the idea that HRC had done specs on the bid for it should add water tower painting. It says water, but it should be water tower painting.
What page is that?
Oh, on 2.
2, okay.
Yeah. And in the third line down, actually, there's a number of them in there. Dixon is Dixon. And it's about middle of that. He then asked about Bridgeway coming in for generators. Right after generators, it should say they are old, but every time they work. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Sorry, Maggie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On page 11, it's the first paragraph, the last line. It says, she stated it alleviates. It's alleviate is the word. And then on page 14, it is in the council comment section 9. It is in the second sentence on the far right side. At the parking lot, it's Lambeau Field. Lambeau. My poor little Packers. Lambeau Field.
What paragraph is that?
It's in my council comment.
I'm looking.
It's not Holman Field, it's Lambeau Field.
Right there. Oh, okay.
Yes, Tim.
I emailed the clerk and council. There's a couple of corrections I had on pages 8 and 9 on the GFL discussion. ROSAC is 3 R's, is an acronym, and then the name of the GFL representative is Sam Caramano, and there was one misspelling of Mike Sakel's name in the middle of the paragraph on page 8.
I move the minutes as amended.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Approval of the bills, which we have none. So we will move to approval of tonight's agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I have a change to recommend. Prior to public comment, I would like to insert comment from Council Member Richards.
We gotta agree to it.
Do we need to make a motion?
I move the agenda as amended. Yeah.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Okay, tell me when.
Go ahead, Carl.
Okay. Can I stand?
You can, if you'd like.
I would like to stand. Everyone present, and especially Mr. Pelosi. I'll read from my statement, which I prepared. Okay. During our special meeting on January 18th, my statements and questions to Ms. Pelosi were obviously not tactfully and well formatted. Therefore, I wish to express my humble and sincere apology to Ms. Pelosi and all other parties that were present. My questions were not intended to affront anyone's sensibilities in any way. I was simply trying to find clarity about time constraints that to my concept and purpose could occur if there was a newborn infant present in her life. Full concentration and solitude for deep introspection and analysis of issues is required for adequate performance of our civic duties here on council. At least by me, that's the way my mind works, okay? Thank you very much, and as I said a long time ago, I'm here about damage control and saving money, not creating damage and blowing money. Okay, thank you very much.
At this time, we'd like to open it up for public comment. Please remember to mention or state your address and name before you start.
I'll go first. Joyce Clohessy, 954 Oxford. I expected to come to a meeting Thursday where applicants were discussed based on their qualifications and who would best serve the community. I did not expect to attend a public interview in which I would be asked, "Didn't you just have a baby?" by counsel at a microphone during a recorded meeting. My reproductive history was of concern to our government instead of my employment or education history or what I have to offer. Questioning persisted regarding how long ago I had the baby, etc., as if some answer might somehow be better or worse. Disgusting. This is a degrading oversimplification of my value as a woman in our community. The more I think about it, the sadder I am that this is the regard council holds for women. Is it valuable information to South Lyon when I last gave birth? I am so disheartened. The implication that having a child diminishes my ability to serve is degrading to all moms. It's certainly not funny, as the mayor found it. This is an example of an interview in South Lyon. How embarrassing. My family has seen this video. They think it's disgusting and inappropriate. My friends have seen this video. They think it's disgusting and inappropriate. I live in this city. I own 3 properties in this city. I volunteer in this city. And I have advocated when I felt council has acted unethically. I am proud of my family and so insulted that this is how I or any woman in our city or anywhere coming out for a city council seat would be questioned. It's gross. I have been so disheartened since this experience and very angry that this is how I was treated by our council and it was found humorous by the mayor. I hope my daughter will be asked about her skills, not her uterus's activities, if she wants to run for a government position someday. The mayor never gavelled the council member. The mayor found the citizen questioned inappropriately to be more a hilarious moment, not opportunity to limit the inappropriate situation. Neither the mayor nor the city attorney put this behavior in check. The mayor told a council member she was out of time to ask questions, so he knew he was running this meeting. These questions were asked by elected government officials. How shameful. I feel this was to shame me out of continuing to participate and discourage me from continuing to speak up in hopes I'll eventually go away. You don't allow these questions of an applicant you're genuinely considering. This is how I will be remembered, the one who was asked when she had a baby. That's what the news article talks about, inappropriate questions being asked to me. Not any of what I have to offer. How sad. That's what I am to the public now, the applicant who had a baby. Do they remember I have multiple degrees? Nope, you never asked about them. How would you feel if your partner, Mr. Pelchat, came to council to be interviewed for a council seat and was asked about her OBGYN history? Maybe she's had pregnancies or miscarriages or has been unable to have children, and I was in your place and laughed about her being asked. Participation in our city government is low. Now people will wonder if our government is going to publicly ask them about their reproductive history, living arrangements, or other personal matters if they are interested in coming out for a council seat or position. Or is this just me? No one should feel they could be subjected to this by their government to serve their community or because they've been previously vocal. No one ever. On a separate matter, I was asked a question during my interview, and I would like to set the record straight so it can no longer be used to intimidate a council member. I was asked by Council Member Prisian, do you have any personal or financial relationships with anyone on council? I answered that I do not. I stand by this statement and that I answered it correctly and accurately. Council Member Walton informed me she was asked by Council Member Prisian to call her at some point after Thursday's meeting. Council Member Walton reported to me that during the call, Council Member Prisian asserted to her that I had lied, as Council Member Walton and I are friends. Also, reportedly chastising Council Member Walton for not correcting me. I resent her attempting to use my answer to intimidate her co-council member as if to expose some secret. This is highly inappropriate. I also consider myself to be friends with Councilmember Kurzweil and former Councilmember Rizzi and his wife. I would not consider myself to be in a personal relationship with any of them. As a married woman, I consider myself to be in a personal relationship with my husband. Councilmember Parisian asked multiple questions of me. She certainly could have clarified friend or acquaintance if she felt I was being less than truthful. To my knowledge, Ms. Parisian has a law license, and if she wanted to word her question a certain way, she was more than capable of doing so. I resent her using my answer, given in good faith, to call another council member and act as if she has some blackmail to use. I feel compelled to remove all ambiguity from my answer and make sure everyone is aware of this activity.
Mr. Mayor, are we allowed to respond?
No.
We will save comments for council till the end of the meeting.
Hey everyone, Ashley Enstead, 1104 Chestnut Lane. Congrats to our newest council member, Mr. Kennedy. Your experience as a consultant will bring great value and hopefully a level of professionalism to this council. I, like many others, am appalled by the interview questions that Mr. Richards asked. The questions were not at all relevant to the positions that the candidates were applying for. And you should all be ashamed of yourself for allowing these questions to happen and not putting a stop to it, especially you, Mr. Pelchat. As the mayor, it's your responsibility to intervene in these situations and turn it into a teachable moment, not to nervously laugh and wait for the candidate to answer. Mr. Richards, you were disappointed that only 4 people applied for this role. I think this incident is a good example for why our residents may be discouraged from getting involved in this community, especially in council or other positions. Thanks.
Hi, Council. Ryan Cottengum, 601 South Lafayette, Witches Hat Brewing Company. I'm here today to speak against the first reading, or speak against this ordinance in which you guys will be having your first reading again.
Point of order.
Yeah, right.
Point of order. Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Maggie.
Thank you. The issue that the individual wishes to speak on is an item of old business that's on the agenda. It's an agenda item. Public comment is for items that are not on the agenda.
Okay. Will we be able to speak during
Yes.
that part of the? Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That comment that yes isn't a given. You don't decide who gets to speak and who doesn't during the course of an issue or an item on the agenda. So that's a decision council would make.
Well, let's put that on for the next meeting to discuss parliamentary procedure. That's the way it's always been. It's been customary practice.
All right, with that, we'll close public comment and we'll move on to old business number 1, discussion of downtown.
Good evening, Council. You have the report. Our interim city manager has put those back in the packet. So I think we had a great meeting. One of the items, a meeting with the city attorney, Lloyd Collins and I, last Tuesday. And I look forward to making progress on those issues. Looking at the different approaches to take for the development of the Veterans parking lot and adjacent property. Continuing to look at platform dining. And tonight, of course, we'll be discussing the proposed liquor license. Looking at the potential for a request by Superb Fabricating for tax abatement. So how do we strategize, create procedure and policy for that for the future? And then continuing to pursue resolving all the code issues with the buildings noted before. I'd really like to point out, in addition to those items, that we're in a period of great change for 2018. And I think people need to have patience, because what we're going to see is some businesses come in. They're approaching the owner. We would like to dictate what comes in, but we can't always do that. So the relationship with owners is very important, so that those owners, building owners, know that we have retail priority, restaurant priority. But there are long-standing relationships in the community, so sometimes when a building's available, a friend calls a friend, and there's a lease that takes place without any involvement by people. So keep that in mind. You'll see a couple changes. There'll be a new retailer. I'm not going to say where yet. There's an old saying by a gentleman that's probably one of the top officials for downtown development in this country, Don Ripkema. We always try to improve the DNA of the herd when we seek new businesses. And we can't always do that. But I think we're going to welcome a good business and support them every way we can. So keep those things in mind. Another item is that there are many opportunities coming. A lot of buildings will be changing hands. So we're going to see quite a few property sales. We're going to see several industrial expansions. And then I think definitely we are where we need to be. I think that we're really just reaching the tip of the iceberg for the success to see, not only downtown, but throughout the community. There's a handout for investment that took place the last 6 months of 2017. The Downtown and Economic Development Annual Report was just for the previous fiscal year. So we're 6 months into the current fiscal year, and so that's what that update is. But I think you can see that there's a very exciting 2018 coming because we have about $4 million of proposed investment coming in. So it's an exciting time. I think it'll also be an exciting time for the general fund. So we'll leave it at that. Any questions?
Mr. Mayor, I do have a question. Thank you. So Bob, I just have a quick question. You had mentioned platforms, the sidewalk platforms?
Correct.
So I walk through Greektown every day, and I notice those platforms. However, Greektown is much larger. Their streets are much larger than what we have downtown. So if we were to implement that and bring that to our city, that would take away any parking that we already have downtown, and parking is already pretty scarce. So I know you have a lot on your plate, and you're doing so much for the downtown. You're doing a fantastic job. I personally don't think that the platforms is an issue, and I don't think it's something that would fit in our town. That's just my 2 cents on that, because there's just no, I wouldn't like to take away the parking spaces that we already have in that downtown area. And some of those businesses don't have storefronts where you would sit out and drink coffee. A lot of those businesses are the theater and, you know, that retail.
I would like to say that I think we're going to take a very thorough look at this. Lloyd Collins and Tim Wilhelm and I. And certainly we look at the big picture of how much parking is available, the width of our streets. Lloyd and I think, are in agreement, and we'll be making some strong recommendations. But we're not really done, and we hope to report out on this, working with Tim in the next few weeks.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
If I could just, I'm assuming that any platform dining would end up being associated directly with the restaurant that it would be associated with. So. Correct. It's not as though everybody will, it won't be a bidding war for finding parking spaces to put a platform on from some unassociated location. So, you know, I think that might end up being a misunderstanding of some people might end up imagining it would just be retail space or something out there in the middle of the street, and that's not necessarily so.
And I think just so that for people in the audience and others at home, platform dining is the concept of using a parking space or spaces that are directly in front of a business that fronts on one of our streets downtown. It's been done in other communities, but we're taking a close look here and working with Tim and Lloyd, and we'll come back with a recommendation.
Mr. Mayor, could I comment?
Please.
I think it's very important, certainly from the police department perspective, but also for the public to know that the parking spaces that would be under consideration would, of course, be on county roads, so it would have to involve the County Road Commission for Oakland County, in any planning or consideration or contemplation of platform dining. From a police perspective, the primary concern of such an arrangement, given the narrowness of our streets, would be the safety and how would you protect diners on that platform when you have moving traffic. Not insurmountable, but certainly something to think about.
Thank you. Did anyone else have anything for Bob?
I'll say something.
Go ahead, Carl. Sorry.
No, if you don't want me to say anything.
No,
I
no,
won't.
go ahead.
I visited the 4 sites on the red tag list, okay? One of them, I had the house wrong. I had the wrong house all these years until I looked, oh, but am I kidding me? Anyway, it's blight, okay, no doubt about it. I also talked to 2 of the principal people involved, and you, without naming anyone, you know who I'm talking about. Okay, and he's planning on moving out in a year when his lease runs out on Lafayette Street, and I've been informed that both buildings, parts of both buildings have been cleaned out, except for the 3rd floor at 135, and I was invited to go up there and look at it, okay, with him, because I've never been in the 3rd floor, okay, in that building. And himself and his brothers and sisters, and they're all in their 60s, okay, have done this on their own, okay. The only thing remaining in 113 is the baseboard in bronze with the wires for the grand piano. The last grand piano that was in there. It's the only thing in the upstairs that's remaining. So work has been done, and they're going along with things.
That's good.
I'm just letting you know, and I don't know on the 110. I don't know. I didn't talk to him directly, you know, but I never walked around back before, but I did this time, and it's not in too good a shape. That's for sure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
We'll move on to old business number 2, ethics ordinance amendment, first reading. Possible course of action and suggested motion to approve the first reading of the ordinance amending city's ethics ordinance. Council.
Mr. Mayor,
Tim?
I only wanted to point out a few things. So this ordinance was drafted by Mel Muskovitz of Dykema as the final part of his assignment related to his previous work. So I did not draft this, but I've reviewed it in more detail. I do want to point out a couple of things. As drafted and proposed, the city would still have a ethics board or commission, board of ethics. So if you currently have that, it's not populated. If you're going to amend this, I think you need to make a deliberate effort to populate that and get it working. One of the things that I noticed when I was going through this, slightly different animal in that Flint just went through a charter revision or amendment, and there was an interesting ethics component and section in their charter. They do have a strong mayor form of government, but nonetheless I thought it was useful in understanding how another community is dealing with some of the same issues that South Lyon faces. I encourage you all to look at that. If you need a copy, I'd be happy to provide it. It is a large document. If you'd like just that ethics section, I could provide that as well.
Which community was that?
City of Flint.
Flint, okay.
So it was just adopted in the August of 17 election, confirmed by the voters. So you do have the Board of Ethics, and the other thing I wanted to point out is on page 5 of the black line, which section is it? So it would be 276 sub G is in George. It references the requirement for the disclosure statement, which has also been provided by Mr. Muskovitz. Any city official would be all the elected officials, all of your volunteer appointments to boards, commissions, and so forth would be required to fill out that disclosure statement, and any change in circumstances would require them to do that. And if I remember correctly, upon election or appointment, and I don't know that I see an annual requirement for that, but I do think this ordinance is a step in the right direction. Having a ethics board take a review of this and maybe report back after a reasonable period of time would be one of the first projects they could do if council desires to go forward and approve this. Those were the 2 points I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Glenn.
Page 6, the section 277, political activity. The heading A, no appointed official or employee in the administrative service shall use the prestige of his or her position on behalf of any political party. Could you give me an example of what that's supposed to be associated with?
That'd be you asking somebody in the audience or on the street, I'm the South Lyon council member, you need to donate to the independent party. And using your office in connection with that is a violation of this ordinance, arguably.
Okay. So speaking of the attributes of a particular party of one nature or another is wholly okay. Simply asking someone to make a donation is the illegal aspect of that?
Machine politics type concepts would be applicable. If you're using your office to encourage people and pressure them to do something politically that they don't otherwise have to do, that's what this is designed to do.
Well, I mean, yeah, if you're trying to muscle somebody, that's one thing, but being an advocate for any political position is a wholly different story.
Well,
we don't give up our rights simply because we hold office.
Well, I looked at this issue. There was a comment during the last council meeting on this particular point. So there is a statute on point. It's Public Act 169 of 1976, Political Activities by Public Employees, MCL 15.401 through 407. I can certainly provide that to you. In addition, the city's personnel policy, section 9G, has 8 different items that are prohibited activity and subject an employee to discipline under that policy. In addition, section 57 of the Michigan Campaign Finance Act may be applicable. This deals with basically public resources and funds, that how they can and cannot be used for ballot initiatives and other type items. And then also we have the contracts with public servants statute, which deals with local elected officials having contracts with the public entity they serve on. So that's Public Act 317 of 1968, MCL 15.321.
I'd like to see all that stuff. I really don't understand how having a conversation with somebody equates what some of the negative comment or connotation that you associate with that kind of stuff. But I'd love to read that.
I think the Political Activities Act, Political Activities by Public Employees, will provide you with some better context for that.
And secondly, B, no, I'd like to just simply add during working hours to B, the idea that you aren't abridged of your ability to have a political being. So as long as you're not doing it at work, I don't understand why we would have an ethical concern about stuff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a problem with the political activity because I'm very active politically outside of city council. And if I want to do an endorsement for a candidate in Milford or Wixom, I want to be able to do that endorsement. And whenever you do political endorsements, you state your position as to where you are and where you're coming from. So would that prevent me from doing political endorsements?
I don't think so, but I haven't analyzed that issue.
Well, that's kind of an important issue. I mean, other politicians do it. They do it all the time. You get your campaign literature, and you see all these endorsements from people.
That would tend to lead me from a starting point that it's not a violation of any statute that I've referenced. And I just haven't not looked at specific scenarios. I didn't draft this ordinance.
Well, I would be using,
If you would like me to look at a particular question, I can certainly do that.
well, when you look at it, no appointed official shall use the prestige of his or her position on behalf of any political party. So without becoming Democrat or Republican, say there's an independent party out there, and I want to endorse a candidate on the independent party ticket. Well, that's a political party. I'm providing an endorsement. I'm using my office because I'm saying, city council member. So that falls square on number A.
I don't have an answer for you. I have not analyzed that. The language, but for the several black lines in 277, which appears to be currently 276, is currently your ordinance. You can adopt this ordinance and proceed, and then instruct me to revise that particular section, or you can instruct me to do that now and hold off on the changes that are currently before the council.
I would prefer it were amended prior to our approval. I mean, we can do the first reading, I guess, and with that being a given that you're going to address those concerns. We aren't abridged of our constitutional rights to have a political voice simply because we're office holders. So
I don't think that's the intent of the ordinance.
Well,
I know it, but I mean, I've been intimately familiar with intent and a misuse of intent, and I would just assume it was clearly spoken to that you can speak, you simply can't use it to muscle somebody into, you can't use it to bludgeon someone into giving a contribution or, some of the darker sides of that whole story.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. All I'm saying is if you would like a review and a proposed revision of the political activity ordinance that you have in place, that section, I need time to do it.
That's fair.
I didn't prepare this. I'm not endorsing any changes or your existing ordinance. I simply need time to address it.
Of the whole thing, that's really the only one that, there's a number of things that I think are actually unnecessary, but that's the only one that I actually have a bone of contention with. So,
Mary, did you have something to say?
I was just going to say, I think that's reasonable to ask for more time to thoroughly research the political activity section and then move forward with it and come back to council so we can approve it all at once. I don't necessarily have a problem with subsection A, except for I think it's one thing to discuss political activity as a candidate or as an elected official. I think it's another thing to say you should donate to X, Y, and Z or donate to this candidate. When you start involving money, it becomes a financial interest, and then it becomes dicey. I would prefer to see something along those lines involved in this. I think a mere conversation or mentioning, because the way I read it was any type of political activity, meaning any discussion as well, is encompassed in that, which I don't think should be an issue. So that's my only issue is I would like to see something financial involved in this. If there's talks of financial gain, if the political candidate is trying to get you to donate, I think that's where we should draw the line.
The Political Activities by Public Employees Act is square on that point. And not having prepared, I can't cite you
It's okay.
on the statute, but that, any revision is going to have to take into account that statute, other issues. I'd like to take a look at what other communities have done on this particular question.
Well, even if we cite to that law, if we even just place the law in there, I think it would even save you the hassle of having to write something. The city of South Lyon follows the rules and regulations followed by Public Act 172 or 176, MCL, etc. And that way, you can even put the work on the reader to have them go look it up, and they can see and they can read through the lines. But I don't think necessarily even need to put that in here. Just reference it.
Right, and so I just haven't analyzed. I don't know,
No,
I haven't
it's
looked
not
at the
your
scope
work.
of that statute. What are the possibilities that you might want to regulate from an ethics standpoint with respect to political activity without stepping on anybody's constitutional rights or their interest in particular political activities that are not unethical, but you don't want to inadvertently step on those areas or those activities. But I have no problem with anything any of the comments made. I'm happy to look at it, but I would need more time.
And that's fair. That's reasonable.
Do you have a sense of how long? I mean,
I'd like a 30-day window.
okay. Well, do you think we should table it, or do you think we should have the first reading with that?
I think we should give Tim his 30 days and come back to us with the information. I think both concerns about the language are appropriate to be looked into, and we give Mr. Wilhelm 30 days to take a look at it, and we'll readdress it then.
So would it be next month, the second meeting of February? Is that adequate?
Do we have a motion?
Yeah, trying to find the date.
Okay.
The 26th. I move that we table, shoot, now I lost my agenda.
The first reading of the ordinance?
Okay, yeah, the ethics ordinance amendment first reading to the February 26th meeting.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Motion passes.
Yes, motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to old business number 3, first reading of liquor license ordinance. Now, we did have someone with interest in public comment. Should we allow them to lead
I'm
off?
okay with that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Sorry for speaking out. Didn't know I couldn't speak in public comment on an agenda item. Ryan Cottengim, which is at Brewing Company, 601 South Lafayette. I'm here against this ordinance, the liquor license ordinance again. I don't believe that the statement of purpose is, I just don't think it's okay, and I think the whole document is out of scope of that statement of purpose. I believe that the citizens in our town and our entrepreneurs that are wanting to put businesses here should be allowed to have the opportunity outside of an extra document ordinance governmental authority stopping them from doing that. And to me, that's what this document does. And it specifically states that in your statement of purpose on this ordinance, that it allows city council, actually it says it requires city council to identify what city council believes the city and its residents need. I don't think that's okay. As an existing business in a liquor establishment, I think that that is so anti-business and anti-growth, and I don't agree with that. And on top of that, we're putting in you guys are putting in an ordinance, a document that already, I guess, much like what you just talked about with the past ordinance, that there are laws that already dictate some of that ethics stuff. And you guys are wanting to put something else in rather than just say, we're going to adhere to these laws. We already are governed by so many laws. So many different government agencies already regulate us. There's already laws there. I don't understand why there has to be one more layer on top, especially when it makes it more vague. It allows for more decisions to be made against what is already set in place by you as a council and by a city. I guess maybe some of our DNA needs to improve, by new coming in, which I don't agree with, and I think that was a little out of line, to be honest. I think we have some great businesses here in town that are doing a lot of good things, and to me, this ordinance and how it's been and how it incorporates aspects of growth and even just now the ordinance kind of dictating and putting in your hands hours of operations if we want to change it and things if we want to modify our businesses, when you don't do that with other businesses in town. You don't do it with manufacturing businesses and other industries. You do it with us, and I don't think that's okay. So I hope that you consider what I'm saying. I also hope that you look at the money that is being spent in drafting this ordinance that, to me, I don't think you need. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cottingham.
Thank you.
I have a couple of things that I'd like to at least ask Tim if he could. I did read your email, and I thought some of it was appropriate, and some of it I just don't necessarily agree with. But he's got one concern on page 9, number 4. It seems like adding or a letter of intent. This is regarding proof of ownership or a lease agreement with an existing facility prior to being able to get approval. It doesn't seem like a real stretch to say it, or letter of intent to lease or purchase from both building management or the licensed applicant. I mean, that seems like a strong enough constraint to validate that they are in agreement to move forward with something, and it doesn't obligate them to spend all the money if they can't finalize that stuff. And you're not going to want to make an arrangement with someone and then find out that the city is going to have some resistance to your being able to consummate your agreement. So, and also on page 9, section 837, I'd like an explanation about what the value of these changes in operation are supposed to. I can understand that, and just to Mr. Cottingham's concerns, the city's interest in this is primarily our quota licenses. I mean, that's a commodity that we don't have any more control over than simply the pro rata relationship of what our population is at the decade to how many licenses we have. So obviously we don't want to get one and watch it end up going someplace else out of our boundaries, because that's an asset for the city. So trying to have some role in managing its existence and functional existence within our border is in our interest. So that, I think, is probably driving a great deal of the language that's related to what's going on in here. And I'm assuming that the change in operation is probably plays some role in that, and that whatever revenues are being generated as a product of the benefit of this license that is this location's to give. If you're not maximizing it, somebody else might have been able to and put us in a better financial position.
Can I speak to that?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to interrupt, but I just wanted to speak to my point there.
This is just my 2 cents worth. This isn't the body. So.
No, and I agree. And sorry, I didn't speak to all my points. I didn't want to just take up a whole bunch of time either. On my end, it said that a 25% in change of revenues, right? And this is why I said that this is out of scope of the statement of purpose, because you're including me. You're including a microbrewery, which is not a quoted Class C license. And now you're including me, so now this includes me. Let's say I want to put in 4 new tanks, which I don't need. They just sit there and I fill them with beer. And I want to increase my sales now by more than 25% distribution to Ohio. I now have to come before you and ask permission for that, according to this ordinance.
Is that such an onerous burden, though?
What if you tell me no? And I don't know why you'd say no, but why is that option there? That's what I don't understand.
I understand not wanting to forecast the unpredictable, but it's just commonsensical that there wouldn't be an objection.
Or if my lunch business is not good and I want to wait and I want to open at 5 o'clock, I have to come before you and say, hey, okay, I want to change my hours to 5 o'clock. Well, no, we want to make sure we have lunch traffic down there, so no. And now my business, I have to, it just opens it, and it makes it, to me, it makes all of this so vague when there's already laws that govern all of these things, and now it's just giving me one more step. So yes, it is burdenous, and it is, to me, it's just not necessary.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
I'd like to finish this, please.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask the attorney, or actually whoever's language this is, what the valid aspect of that argument would be. So, because it's a little bit mysterious to me too. I don't know why that would play a role in our interests. Could you enlighten me at all?
Well, Mr. Mayor, and Council, I think Councilmember Kivel has started to identify the governmental interest here. You are required on new on-premises licenses to approve before that applicant can go to the MLCC. So you're the first step. A big part of this ordinance is to have a written procedure and criteria in place so that you're not doing it ad hoc. To me, that's a huge benefit. As an attorney, when you're making ad hoc decisions, you put yourself at risk. Now, that's not to say that all the risk goes away by having a written ordinance. But these are valuable approvals that you get from the city of South Lyon for very little money. And one of the governmental interests here is this is a scarce resource. It has value to the applicants. And the governmental perspective is when we give approval, we want to get the most value back for our community and our residents. We want to know what you're going to do. We want to know because we want you to be successful. We want you to have a great business that's going to be an asset to the community, that's going to bring in revenue, generate tax dollars, be a destination. Those are all governmental interests. Some of these things may look out of context, but if you don't have a lease, you have a letter of intent that you can cancel, then you get the license, and then 1 month in, you want to go change to a Rubik's Cube lounge, which we don't think would be successful, we might have given you a different answer. We want some ability to control and hold you to what you represent, that this is the business I want to run in your community. I am representing, this is what I will do, and I am asking you to approve it so I can get my liquor license and do this. When you give that applicant the out to just disregard whatever they told you, you've missed the boat. That's not what governments do. These are valuable assets that they can take out of your community. That's what the state has been doing. They've been restricting and chipping away at your ability to control these. And I don't have any problem with Mr. Cottengim's statements, but this is the governmental interest. If he is increasing his sales, we may have interest that he's not seeing. Is he going to outgrow his space? Do we have to worry about zoning issues? Those are all valid concerns when people change their business. This provision in 837 was modified to be a 3-year window, which is consistent with the time period that the state limits or prohibits transfers of licenses. So the state is even saying, we want you to be in business for 3 years before you can transfer it somewhere else in the city or out of the city. The state is saying, we want to know if you're going to open another bar inside your building. We want to know if you change owners. Well, why doesn't the city of South Lyon have the same standing as the state? I understand he's saying it's duplicative, but we don't have all the information the state does. These are the city's governmental interests. This is not onerous. This is as bare bones as this is the other extreme compared to the one you saw originally.
Okay, I'd like to follow up that. Can't we get an assurance that the license could be rescinded if they somehow the deal goes south? They don't consummate the lease, and all of a sudden the ability to get that license is pulled off the table.
If I may, Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
Your point is well taken as to the lease and having a final lease. I will look into that. The problem is it's much harder to undo something when you've issued a license and get it revoked because you don't actually control the license. The state of Michigan does through the MLCC. I think it's wiser to say, you've come to us, you said you're going to do this, and we're going to hold your feet to it. If they want to change, you can certainly agree to that change if they come to you and ask. There's nothing that says they can't change. It's just you're looking to get a representation, I'm applying, I want this license, here's what I'm gonna do with it, here's how I'm the best applicant for this license. This is what I'm gonna do for your community. And then you have the ability to hold them to that. That's the very basics of this ordinance. It provides flexibility to change things. They can add bars, they can change the style and the menu and all that. We're not trying to be overly burdened, but we do want the information. We do want the ability to say yes, no, or why. Your point is well taken, though. I will look at that. I think it's the short answer to your question is it's much harder to revoke something when you've already issued it than to ensure that what has been represented is done before you issue it.
I'm just surprised that we're the test case for that. That seems as elementary as can be, that you want to end up allowing them to make their pitch, get all their ducks in a row, they have their business plan, they do everything that you need to be able to predict that this will end up being an asset to the community for the liquor license. But they don't have they're not going to make the commitment to buy the building or to encumber themselves financially on a building without knowledge that they will be able to get that license. Or at least it'll be the state that ends up causing them grief, not the city. So if there's some way that if we can rescind it in the event that they can't consummate the property, then
I mean, you could do an agreement. I mean, I came to you the first time with a much more sophisticated ordinance that would allow for an agreement outside of the permitting process that is required. So largely this ordinance is to provide a process and formalize a process that's required under state law. You have to do that approval process. And right now you don't have an ordinance that tells you how to do that. You have some examples in the past.
Right.
But there are other ways to go about this regulatory scheme. One way is to use agreements between the city and the applicant that may provide a different legal basis on which to go after and obtain the license back or revoke it. But that wasn't what I was directed to do. I was directed to pull this back, be consistent with state law, do only the bare minimum, and that requires some risk on your part. I've included that provision to try and keep your risk minimal.
And MLCC would allow you to have these extraneous agreements?
It's my understanding there is a little bit of delicacy that needs to be, because you cannot condition the license approval on the agreement. So they are truly different side agreements, to use that term loosely. But they provide you, and it doesn't necessarily solve the problem or the question you're raising. It may provide you a different legal basis, breach of contract. You could pursue an applicant for saying, you said you were going to lease parcel A, you did not. That's a breach of contract. You didn't ask me to change the agreement. Where are you going to locate? You've now got your license through MLCC. I don't have a liquor establishment in my community like you told me I would. And that's really what this boils down to, is simply trying to ensure that what the applicant says they're going to do, they follow through on it. And really, if you look at the details, it's only for a period of 3 years, and then it's really just an annual renewal. If you find that they are problematic, you could refuse to renew, or you could request a revocation. But in my understanding, South Lyon has never done that. I did find one example on roughly 2010 or 11 where the city sought to revoke a license that had been put in escrow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was valid too. The 3-year timeline to me seems like that's a pretty good predictor that it's a real operation and it's got legs. So that's why the change in operation aspects of those things, except for underutilizing perhaps how much traffic would be generated through town, I'm not seeing how we're harmed by if there were a change either in a more robust version or a more scaled down version, as long as they were functioning in the city with that license, so.
You know, to try and add to this, part of this is to force an applicant to go through the process of showing you that they've looked at all these things. Have you figured out what your hours are going to be? What kind of revenue do you think you're going to get on those hours? What are you going to serve? How much liquor, how much food, how much space, how much kitchen space? Will you be able to keep up with the demand? Those questions are part of formulating a business plan, which is truly what a liquor establishment is and requires. I don't think it's unreasonable or an overreach to say we're entitled to see that kind of effort and analysis from an applicant before we decide if we're going to give you a liquor license.
I just wonder who are the ones doing the analytics for the city? We get all this information, who's digesting that to find out whether or not these numbers are valid?
You can certainly, if you don't have the expertise among your members, you can go get that expertise if you feel it's necessary. That may be a bit. That's
kind of the point. If we're asking for information that we can't actually glean value from,
well, I disagree. You don't think that you can read a business plan? I mean, I'm not trying to be flip. I think this council can understand information of the nature that's asked for with an application.
Well, I don't have a great understanding of kitchen size as related to how many hamburgers they're going to serve and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, maybe somebody else on this body would be able to answer that, but I certainly couldn't. So, okay. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mary, I know you've been waiting for a moment, but Mr. Cottingham, did you have something to add?
Yeah, that's okay.
And then we'll come to you.
Yeah, that's okay.
And I wanted to speak to the letter of intent thing that Mr. Wilhelm doesn't really know law on, and I think I can clarify this, at least on the microbrewery side, maybe not so much on the Class C side, but the MLCC already requires us to have a location. We come before you because they require your approval on us at this location. If we move, we have to do it all over again. We don't just get our license. Licenses are tied to the location. It is not just, oh, cool, we can go somewhere else now. So, I mean, that's pretty easy information that you can get from the MLCC. On top of that, reading a business plan, all that other information, yeah, I have a concern, I guess, in how you guys will look at that and review it. We already submit all of that stuff, a business plan. We do that. We don't fly. We're not able to just not do that. We have to submit it to the health department, or the Department of Agriculture, who goes over all that stuff and has staff that knows what they're looking for in that stuff. And the same thing with MLCC. All of those things that you guys just debated about, there are already laws and regulations governing. That is my point.
Thank you. Mary?
So I just wanted to well, first of all, I just wanted to apologize earlier because that comment, I didn't realize just until now that it was kind of rude. So sorry about that. Yeah, I didn't realize that. And then I'm going to play devil's advocate for just a second because I know nothing about how to run a business. I know nothing about how many feet or what percentage of the food, the hours that it should be, any of the substantial changes that are listed in Section 8-37. So I guess playing devil's advocate, if they have to come to council to get approval for these substantial changes, I just don't see us as being the proper body to do that, simply because we don't have the qualifications. I don't know everyone's background on council, but as far as I know, none of us own businesses. So how would I know that? The closest I could think of would be maybe DDA members or a planning commission, because they would seem more qualified than us, and I wouldn't want to put that burden on them. But I just don't. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate here, just to say, like, if I'm a business owner and I have a substantial change and I come to council, what makes us qualified to say yay or nay to your change? And I know we just touched on that a second ago. I'm just reiterating the side of it that I thought of.
Tim?
So I'm not, I hope this doesn't come across as I'm trying to lobby and advocate for something. I drafted this. I think this is a basic ordinance. If something's not relevant to you, it's not relevant to you. But one of the scenarios that I've gone through in drafting this is, well, boy, I wish I'd known that before I granted the approval. They were only going to be open one day a week. Or they weren't going to have a kitchen. Yeah. I wish I'd known that. I understand the concern that, the difference between, 100 square feet on a kitchen versus not having that 100 square feet on a kitchen may not mean anything side by side when that's the comparison. But knowing that they have a kitchen of a particular size allows you to evaluate the entire application and whether you think it is appropriate. Will it be an asset to the community? Do you think they'll be successful? That's what this is designed to do. This is, and I know Councilmember Parisian can speak to the paring down of the list of criteria that we were looking at.
We did a lot.
We
You
have
did a lot of
tried
work.
to, and tried to keep this basics. I don't think these are unreasonable pieces of information. As Mr. Cottingim points out, they have to do this anyway. They have this information. Why can't they provide it to you? You're entitled to hear it. That's, I guess, my point.
But 37
This is not
is
a-
regard to the changes in operation.
I think, again, I think it's only to ensure that what they've represented and agreed to do in order to get the approval, they follow through on. And there's always a way to change if they feel it's necessary. You can say no, you don't have to agree, but that may lead to a dispute. I don't know how those get resolved exactly. That's up to the owner to decide if that's an unacceptable answer. There are avenues to deal with that as well.
Maggie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to agree with Ryan. I read the ordinance. I thought it was way too restrictive for businesses. I did not like government regulation. I didn't like the government sticking their nose into these businesses and micromanaging just about every decision that they're making. They'll determine what their business is going to be. They'll determine what hours they're going to open. That is what your free market does. That is free market. Once you start interposing your opinion, then I have a real problem with it, except for your opinion that affects maybe safety and public health. A lot of these things in here have nothing to do with public safety or health. This is just over-regulation of a business.
No.
Well, we have a difference of opinion.
Respectfully, no.
But we have a difference of opinion. And I'm a very, very free market individual. And I find this very, very restrictive, very restrictive. So, I mean, I'm not voting for it. I don't like it, but that's just me.
I'd like to add one thing.
Go ahead, Glenn.
The distinction between just a business and what we're speaking to is the license, a quota license, an asset that the city has that you just can't make up from somewhere. So that's the distinction. This isn't solely you're rolling the dice. You want to see if you can make a go of it. If you roll the dice and we end up losing a license, the city is taking it on the chin as a product of that.
Mary?
Just a little background information for people on council and people in the audience as well. This has been an ordinance that's been months in the making. I think since October is when we initially started this, possibly September. But there's been a lot of hours that have gone into this and a lot of revisions, a lot of changes. And with that, it was a lot more restrictive. And my 2 cents was to skim it back as much as we could to get it to match state law, because we have to abide by state law anyway. So if we could scale it back to match state law, that was the ultimate goal, while still protecting the interests of the city, because ultimately that is the goal of council, is to protect our city, to protect our residents. So as it is right now, as Attorney Wilhelm had just stated, it is bare bones. This is as bare bones as it gets. The idea is to be as business friendly as we can be, because we do appreciate our businesses. So that's just a little background info.
State your name, please.
Hi, Katie Stuss from Pins Bowling Center, 700 North Lafayette. When I saw the first version of the liquor ordinance, I did some investigating, and I went to some other cities around us and looked up their ordinances. And most of this one was basically identical to Novi's. I'm not sure if some of you know that, but and I did some other checking, checked Milford, Brighton, Northville. They're all much shorter than this one. I mean, so it might be worth just looking at some other ordinances if you want to scale back a little bit. The one thing that I did notice was like on section 838, part A on page 10, it talks about the City Council has determined that profiteering by on-premises liquor licensees is contrary to the best interest of the city. I mean, right there screams of being anti-business. Now, it goes on to state that this is only for the first 3 years. And I mean, that doesn't apply to me personally, but it's just something, I mean, for new businesses coming in, it might discourage them. So.
Do you understand the intent of that, though? I mean, obviously, we have a limited amount of licenses, so if somebody comes in and then takes it and goes to another community with it, we're out of a license. That is profiteering. I mean, they sold it off to somebody for a higher dollar than what they were charged to take the license initially.
But it could also mean somebody who starts a very successful business, say 2 years in, is just overwhelmed by the time commitment of it and is just tired and exhausted and wants to sell that successful business.
There are caveats in that language, though, that speak to that.
Right.
That, like,
but they can't
health
profit
concerns
from
and
it,
things
though.
of that nature.
But they can't profit from it, even though they've built a successful business.
That's right. That's not the intent of the profiteering reference.
Right.
That's what it says.
It's to take a license, get it, and then move out of the city.
Right.
It doesn't state to move it out of the city in this, though.
It's in the transfer of existing licenses.
But it can be transferred within the city as well. But it
Which the city shouldn't have a problem with. They would go through the process, and the city shouldn't have a problem with that.
Okay. But in just from, to back up Ryan's thing, I mean, it's just, it screams of being anti-business. So if I was looking to start a business and went through, and read some of the liquor ordinances, okay, I'm going to go through 13 pages of South Lyons, or should I look at the 5 or 6 pages of Milford and Brighton's? It just would seem that they're less restrictive, so I might want to go and do business there.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Chief.
Can I interject 2 comments?
Please.
Yes. First of all, going back to Section 837, Sub A, it does only apply within the first 3 years of the license being issued. So that particular section would not apply to some of the businesses that are concerned with the city controlling their very successful business operation. And then in fairness, because a couple of the people that attended the liquor license ordinance committee meetings did come, we did send the ordinance out by email to everybody who attended the committee meeting, at least whose email addresses we could read, and I think that was all of them. I would like to read just a couple of sentences, and that's all there is in the email, from Mr. Jeff Robinson, who attended our meeting. He's the owner and proprietor of Third Monk Brewing. He says, "Thank you for sending this over. Revisions look good. Expectations are reasonable. Please count Third Monk Brewing Company as in support of the city adopting this." Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
I have one more.
Go ahead, Mary.
I guess taking Katie's point, Katie, correct, into consideration, Attorney Wilhelm, for Section 838A, can we just take out the first sentence and begin with accordingly to prevent profiteering? So instead of that first sentence, we just take that out entirely and just begin with accordingly to prevent profiteering to the full extent, etc.
You could take off the first phrase in the next sentence.
Okay.
To the full extent authorized by law, the city council shall not approve transfer, blah, blah, blah.
Perfect.
You could eliminate the reference to profiteering.
I'm sorry?
you can, I don't have any problem eliminating the references to profiteering. I don't think that changes the substance of what the ordinance in that particular section is trying to do.
So I know this might sound sneaky, but I think to appear more business friendly, because we're trying to be as business friendly as we can be, to take out the language that strikes, that is more obvious, like, oh, we are against this. Instead of saying we're against it, let's just get straight to the point of what state law says, to the full extent of that's authorized by state law. Let's just cut out the preamble before and go straight to that. So that way it doesn't sound as though we are being not business friendly. Because that's the goal. We're trying to find this happy medium, guys. We're trying to balance this out. I think we should just take out that entire section. The city has determined that profiteering is contrary to the best interest of the city. Yet, even though that's obvious, it's not necessary.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Tim.
I don't have a problem with that type of change.
Okay.
But I think to just eliminate the word profiteering, it doesn't change the substance of it. And I don't think that it is anti-business to say that you want your liquor license establishments to stay in your community and to be productive and successful. I think the idea here is it is not at all business friendly or good for the community when people take the licenses out of the community.
I hear you. I don't want to change the substance. I just want to change the language.
If you have to go on the private market and buy an escrowed license because the city doesn't have any escrowed licenses because they made poor decisions, gave them to people who took them out of the community, that's not business friendly, because then you have to go pay a bunch of money to get in the community. Now, I know we only have one quota license on hand, but I disagree with the characterization that this provision in 8-38 is in any way not business friendly.
Balance. Just trying to find that
But
balance.
again, if that's a language change the council wants to make, that's subject to a final review. We would have to do more than one reading, so I don't have a problem with that at this point.
Like I said, it's not changing anything substantively. It would just be going straight to state law and what it's authorizing.
Well, and I don't have the site right in front of me, but under state law, MLCC is not to approve a transfer within 3 years either. That's really what we were trying to match up with.
Okay, cool.
Bob.
I just wanted to make a brief comment, my position for economic development for downtown, that we definitely need some ability to select the best applicant. We need to have some sort of criteria, and so we can't lose sight of that. We need to be able to prioritize. I would hope that we would prioritize downtown, but we need some ability to do that. That's all.
Thank you, Bob.
I've got another comment, though.
Go ahead, Don.
I understand the intent of that comment. The problem is, this isn't like we have a facility, come vie for a license associated to this facility. You make your business pitch, and you may be awarded this license. People are going to come at their own time. They've got enough resources, they have a business plan, they've got a model of what a successful outfit would be, they've got a site that they think can host that type of activity. We're not going to have a line of people necessarily saying, take my pitch is stronger, because everyone's going to be doing it on their own timeline. If it were us pitting one proposal against another one, I could see us having more of an interest for deciding what is the most suitable fit. I don't think the reality is going to go down like that, though. So, I know that this is, my comment is just kind of neutering what I think our interests are, because we do want to hold sway over who gets that license. But it won't be because we're choosing one over another one because they're a better fit for us. It'll be either their pitch is strong enough to carry the day that we would award the license to them, or it isn't. So, and I guess secondarily, that is sort of a competition then, because if we have established criterion that this is our expectation, I think that's the way for us to actually look at it more. This is our expectation. Do you meet these criterion? And if you do, then why would we be resistant to awarding that license? But if you don't, we could end up at least having some benchmarks of why we don't think that their proposal is appropriate for our community. So,
Mr. Cottingham.
Just to kind of touch on that, and once again, I just want to say again, I think that this document is out of scope of the statement of purpose, and I'm gonna lead after that by saying my brewery is not a quota license, and you could have 12 more breweries come in here that are not a quota license. So I'm just going to propose a scenario, and I'm curious to see how it go down, because I understand your point that you guys want to have the best business located at 123 Pontiac Trail or whatever it is, and that's your idea for a fantastic bar restaurant. What if you get a brewery that wants to go there? Are you then going to tell them no because you're saving that for a bigger, better restaurant, even though they're not a quoted license? It's not taking up that one, but then it would give you guys the option to hold that spot for what you see to go best there, what you guys see to go there. Not what entrepreneurs want, not what the citizens of this town want. I understand your scope. I understand what you are saying, what the intent is. Then make it about that. Why are you lumping us in? Why are you lumping in microbreweries? It's diluting the statement of purpose and diluting the scope of what you're trying to do. All these other things. Make it match MLCC law, not get close to it and just a little above. Make it match it. Great. We'd be in support of that. If you're gonna follow what is already there and in law and fills your needs as a city, I'm on board. I'm absolutely on board. But to lump us in with certain criteria that doesn't exactly match us, like has happened, it just dilutes the whole thing, makes it vague, makes it out of scope.
I guess I don't know enough about what the rules are. To me, essentially, there's zoning classes. If a business is compliant with a zoning class, we play a very little role in what's going to be conducted there. So, you're suggesting that we would preclude somebody from doing a microbrewery if our vision seemed like a full-blown bar restaurant was better suited. Well, I mean, if it hits that zoning class, if it's appropriate, we don't get a say in that. So,
But the document says you would. You would have to approve it.
You keep suggesting that the on-premises is the thing that you are classified as?
No, I'm not an on-premise license. On-premise license refer to those with a Class C. I'm a microbrewery. I'm not an on-premise license.
It's not an on-premise.
It's kind of a gray area. I mean, you can call MLCC and you can find this out. Microbreweries can have a tap room, but technically, according to MLCC law, we're not an on-premise license because we can't buy beer from a distributor. We have to make what we buy. We're not a quoted license. Our license is $75 a year. Like that's what our license costs. So you could have a bunch of these coming in. And so when I pitch that scenario to you, this new ordinance says that you guys now get to, pick the best applicant and candidate for this to go in. And in your scope, in your state, your scope here, you're thinking this one Class C liquor license. But it really could be that you're looking at this one location, right? This next prime corner spot could be that, and has nothing to do with the license type. And that part I don't understand. Like I get
tracking how you guys, if you're a microbrewery, why this impacts you.
Because
Pardon me?
It's in the ordinance.
So by classifying in that ordinance that anybody that serves bar or serves alcohol over a bar is now an on-premise license. So in the language in that ordinance, we now become on-premise according to your standards, not the MLCC standards. Once again, above and beyond, and not just mirroring MLCC.
Tim?
My understanding is that a microbrew, there are several non-quota licenses that are considered to be on-premises licenses that require the same Class C local approval before MLCC can proceed. That's why they're included in the ordinance, because whether we have an ordinance or not, we're going to have to go through that process and say yes or no. All this ordinance does is say, this is how you're going to receive the application, this is the information that's come with it, this is the criteria that you're going to look at, and you give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and if they come up for renewal and you don't want to renew it, you can do that. Now, South Lyon is never not renewed unless there's, and I think the only reason you would do that is if there are a problem somehow with, activities outside.
Mr. Donahue?
We are never going to reserve a location for anything. If the building is zoned, it's first come, first serve. It's a free market system. So whoever approaches a building owner at any given time, so we're never going to reserve any building for any purpose.
Thank you.
That seems like a perfect scenario for a lawsuit, quite honestly. I mean, if we end up holding them hostage, if they're compliant with the zoning and we try to hold them up, I mean, we're clearly being obstructionist. So.
Well, I know a lot of people have put a lot of time into this, and it doesn't appear as if the language of this version, it appears that the language may need to be looked at again. Do we have a motion to table this? A motion? Hang on, Carl.
I just feel like there's been a lot of effort put in the months that have passed. So I think if we're going to go back to the drawing board, we need specific direction for the city attorney. And it doesn't seem like anyone else has much of an opinion. So, council, what do we want to do? What do you want to see? I already said that I would like to see it match state law as much as possible. Let's stay aligned with state law. That's been my motto since the beginning. Glenn gave his 2 cents. I think we need to provide a little bit more direction as a group.
Maggie?
I think we have an opinion. It's a very simple opinion. Stay out of business. Quit regulating it. It's that simple. Go through the ordinance. Take out anything that interferes with the business decision of the owner. Stay out of the free market. Just stay out of it. It's that simple. And I think you need to clarify and need to accept out the microbreweries. It's not an on-premise license. That's not what he is. But this ordinance captures his brewery in the ordinance.
Well, to be perfectly honest, I'm going to have to educate myself a little bit more to know the distinction, because I don't think that simply because microbreweries are spoken to here,
Right.
that it is going to end up being the consequence of them being involved in any kind of our review is a negative business consequence. I think that if we play a role or should play a role in determining anything that about activities that go on within the borders of our community, we should have the ability to do that. So if there are approval processes, then we need to know what our obligations are, what our interests are, and act accordingly. So I know that I would like some time to just kind of flesh out some of the particulars in that.
I move to postpone the first reading of the liquor licensing ordinance to the second city council meeting in February 2008.
Great. Discussion?
2018.
Second.
Tim, is that enough time for you? Do you need more time, or do you need more direction?
Well, you're not going to actually have much to go on unless people opine with you. So I guarantee you I'll be talking to you, but if everybody else is going to weigh in.
Do you have the direction?
My preference would just to have table it indefinitely, or just not have a motion on it, and I'll talk with the interim city manager and figure out next steps. Talk with Bob Donahue, figure out what we want to do. I'd like to take some time and look through the comments from tonight, specific provisions, and see if there's a solution that I can bring forward that I think might get better acceptance from council.
Okay.
If we can keep it off a timetable, I'd like to have some flexibility.
Yeah, I think that's all right.
Okay. So withdraw the
Well,
motion.
when you postpone it indefinitely under Robert's rules, you kill the agenda item. And you don't want to do that. Can we move it out to no later than the end of May?
Well, I mean, I'm fine with the postponing to the second meeting in February. Just recognize that if it's not ready, I'm going to ask for additional time.
How about the second meeting in March?
Whatever you feel is appropriate, that's fine, as a council.
All right, I'll amend the motion. I move that the liquor licensing ordinance, the first reading, be postponed until the second city council meeting in the month of March 2018.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. On to new business. Number 1, replacement pump wastewater lift station. The recommendation is to approve this request.
Good evening, Council, Mr. Mayor. Ron Beeson, Chief Operator of Water Wastewater Department.
Thank you.
I'm here tonight requesting Council's approval to waive the bidding process and purchase a replacement pump for Trotters Point Lift Station. On December 27th, we had a pump failure at this lift station. We responded immediately with a crew, pulled the pump. At that time, we did a visual inspection of the pump. We looked for anything in the impeller, a worn impeller, make sure the cavity is not cracked, and the power cord if there's any bare wires. After that visual inspection, we didn't find anything causing the failure, so we took it into hydrodynamics. That is the service for that particular pump, and they're the state rep for ABS pumps. They broke it down, tore it apart, and they found that the failure was probably due to a seal. It let moisture into the cavity where the stator is. If you have some pictures in there, you'll see a little bit of rust on that stator. There shouldn't be any moisture in that part of the pump. It also appeared that it caused a bearing failure, and when that happened, that stator moved around inside the windings and pretty well damaged the windings. So the windings are probably the most costly of that repair, along with the stator. They are the sole source rep for that pump. That is an ABS pump. It's one of the bigger pumps in our inventory. It would be used as a backup pump. We have backup pumps for every lift station, and I'm requesting that we approve this pump purchase.
Mr. Mayor? Yes.
Ron and I have had some preliminary discussions. I'd just like to make those public so that it's a little more education perhaps for the council members and also for the public. So in this particular configuration at this lift station, there's 2 pumps.
Correct.
Both of these are identical.
Correct.
They're not identical to any of the other installations throughout the wastewater system.
We have 9 lift stations, and all of them are a little different. The pump stations, we have Peabody Barnes as one pump. We have ABS and Flight. And each of those are a little different. They're not the same pumps. They're engineered lift stations. They have pump curves. Each one is a little different. Even the impellers are different. The horsepowers are different. It depends on the location and what duty they are. I can tell you that of all the pumps, those are 23 horsepower. They do pump against a pressure main, so they get a lot of use. That one is 5 years old.
The one that just failed?
the one that just failed,
Right,
yes.
and the thing that we talked about, and I spoke with the rep who's provided the quote. You know, the life expectancy on that pump is 5 to 7 years. The warranty on the pump is 5 years. It failed at 4.9 years or whatever it was, about 5 months under the warranty, unfortunately. In talking with the interim city manager, we looked at the possibility of gaining some compensation by contacting the insurance company for the city to see if they'd cover the damage, or talking to the manufacturer because it did not meet its full warranty. And, you know, there's no money to be had in it. I mean, it's a prorated warranty from the manufacturer. It would cost more to ship it back than we would recoup.
Correct.
And there's a fair amount of disagreement between both the manufacturer and the insurance company on what the root cause of the problem truly is. It's kind of a little finger-pointing thing, and, you know, we end up being the losers on it. When I asked Ron about the, you know, whether this was this pump that we're going to purchase for $12,000 was interchangeable with anything else. That's one of the things that I would kind of look at to say this becomes a backup for, you know, 3 or 4 different positions. Unfortunately, again, that's not the case. It backs up these 2 pumps at that particular installation. Correct. The only thing that I would bring up is the question. Okay, so we encountered this failure. My question to Ron was, what do we do going forward? Do we go back and actually analyze what truly took place? We can see what actually happened. Seal failed, water got in, destroyed the bearing. I mean, it's like a series of dominoes. The stator starts wobbling, it tears up the insides and the internals of the thing, and the pump fails. So, but the seal failing, you know, wasn't the root cause of the issue. Something caused that seal to fail.
Correct.
And my question was, when we have failures like this with the city's equipment and assets, do we go back and do root cause analysis to truly find what the initial failure was that caused that problem? Because then we can look at that and say, what do we need to do going forward so that we can avoid that situation in the future with this, not only this installation, but the others throughout the city?
That's correct, yes. It could have been anything. What we see in these wet wells, you wouldn't believe. It could have been twine. Anything getting up into that impeller and causing wear on that seal would have caused that failure.
It's all those flushable wipes, Ron.
It is, yeah.
It could, I mean, and then being facetious, but that does play a part in that.
You're right. I mean, that's correct. We don't think it was a spike. I think that if it were, we would have saw that in our control panel, and we put the spare pump down there, and it's running fine. So we would have seen a phase fail or something other than just a reset. So,
Maggie?
To sort of follow what Steve is saying, it's my understanding that these lift stations were built by the developers in which the lift station is located.
They were, yes.
So the city never really had a whole lot of control.
The engineers do look at the specs. And
The engineers look at them, but the bottom line is you have developers that are building these, and they're not going to put in, top flight kind of engineering and make these lift stations just absolutely infallible. So unfortunately, the city is dealing with some engineer things that meet basic minimum standards of engineering, but they're not designed. They were never designed to last forever. I mean, they are nothing but a constant maintenance issue.
Mr. Mayor? Yeah. And Maggie, with regard to that, I mean, that in and of itself is not necessarily the issue.
Mm-hmm.
The real issue is you can have those types of installations, but if we, and again, this is looking in the rearview mirror for the city. Yeah. If there were standardized requirements, standard methods and specifications for those installations, mm-hmm. then it would have been built the same at each one of those locations. We would have standardized on pumps, and we would have standardized on the way they're installed, so that, again, when you buy a spare, it applies to half a dozen lift stations. It doesn't apply to just one. But again, that's water under the bridge at this point. We have what we have. Mm-hmm. We certainly can't run with just one pump. Would be in violation of the DEQ requirements. And I mean, we need to get the replacement. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, at this point, I think redundancy is the key. I mean, our wastewater plant, our water plant, they run on redundancy. We can't shut the plant down. We can't shut the water plant down, and we surely can't shut a lift station down. We need the redundancy. We need that in our inventory, and I think that's why each and every one of the lift stations in the water and wastewater plant, we haven't had any major issues. There are redundancies built in.
And Ron, the other question was that you and I talked about, and I forgot what your reply was to it. The partner pump in that installation at that lift station, how long ago was that installed?
I believe it was 7 years. I would have to look back at the records. The original pump that is still in there, it might even, I think it's 7 years.
Is it 7 years right now?
Yes.
And that's the projected lifespan of that pump based on what Wally said.
But like I told you, some of these pumps last for 15 years. Some of them last for 10.
Yeah.
I can, for instance, Colonial Acres. We've had issues at Colonial Acres with their pumps. Within a 6-month span, we had both of those pumps out for repair. So it all depends the location of the lift station, what it's pumping, where it is, if it's pumping against a force main, the head, and these are engineered, most of these lift stations are engineered to handle all of those. So, but obviously we have made changes. Colonial Acres, we've made big changes in that pumping station, and that's what we like to do through the years. If we see an issue or a continuous problem, we'll make those changes.
Now, we have a slight advantage here. What's the typical lead time on getting a replacement pump?
We do have an advantage. They have 2 of these actually in the warehouse. Usually the lead time is 6 to anywhere 10 weeks. I can tell you the Colonial Acres repair, that took over 10 weeks to get an impeller to replace that pump.
But they have one right now in North Carolina.
They have one, yes. Yep. We may have to make a few adjustments to it, but we can do that, or they can do that in-house. So I believe if we make those changes, it's at the most 2 weeks.
And the other thing that you're looking at, just again for the benefit of the folks here, is that we expect to basically cannibalize the pump. We're going to salvage the impeller off it. It's $1,000 repair part.
Yep. We can take whatever, and probably I don't know if the blute's still good, but the impeller definitely would still be usable, and it's possible we could use the power cord either on this new pump. If it's still in good condition, they'd have to inspect it, make sure there is no bare there. But we can use that instead of possibly ordering. It comes in a length of, I think, 40 feet, and that pump station, that well is it's
about 10 foot longer or something.
Yep, we need 10 feet longer. So if we can use it, and I talked to Wally, and he's going to look at it, and we'll use it.
Okay. And again, I just wanted to share some of the background information that Ron and I had discussed there.
Glenn?
Well, do you have something?
No.
I just wanted to say that the pump stations, unfortunately, they have different capacities and different needs to push. So it'd be nice if we could uniform the pump and all that kind of stuff so that we could have just a couple of spares. But, you know, you have big developments and medium and small developments, and none of them seem to be of like kind. So, but I'm glad to hear that that we'll be able to harvest some parts off of that. I had intended to ask if there's any core value or anything to the old parts.
We could ask for the parts back. Obviously, the windings are copper. Might be worth some money.
Well, I was thinking the housings and things.
No. Yeah. No, we wouldn't. But the impeller and the volute, maybe. We'll have to see the condition of it. Obviously, it's been in there. It may be worn. Yeah, they may have to balance it.
I didn't know if Wally had a core value is all. You know, he could use those for
we could
rewind a stator or whatever.
Yep. Yeah, right. I could look into that, and I can get with Wally and see if anything's usable. We'll go get it.
Well, I make a motion that we approve. Well, first off, that we waive the competitive bidding process because there would be no advantage to the city in requesting bids since Hydrodynamics is the sole source provider in Michigan for the needed pump. And motion 2, well, do you want to do that separately? Yeah. All right.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
And then secondly, I make a move that we approve the purchase of the ABS Model XFP 150G pump with extra cord from Hydrodynamics for a total cost of $12,467.54.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes.
Thanks, Ron.
Thanks, Ron.
You gonna stay there for a minute? New business number 2, SCADA upgrade. Recommendation is to approve this request.
This was budgeted, right?
This was a budget item, yes. I'm requesting the council's approval to, again, waive the competitive bidding process and upgrade the present SCADA system to a new VT SCADA system. I'd like to, first of all, give you an overview. John from UIS is here. He's got a great PowerPoint presentation. We're going to learn a lot tonight about SCADA and what it does. So I'll start with a little overview of our system. SCADA, it's supervisor control and data acquisition. Let me break that into 2 parts so it might be a little easier to understand. We'll first of all look at the supervisory control. That is the part that gives us as operators the ability to control pumps. We can control our blowers, we can control valves, we control chemical feed pumps, and a variety of other things in the process. It lets us do all of this in one central location. We call it our ops room. Many of you visited our wastewater treatment plant and you've seen the room. It's got 2 screens, and we're able to actually tweak the system whenever we need to from one location. If we look at the data acquisition, the second part of SCADA, very important in our process. This allows us to gather the data. We can trend pumps. We can see what pumps are running. We can see our DO. We always wanted to keep a DO at 1.2. We can trend that. We can see all 9 of our lift stations. We can see what pump's running, how long it's running. We couldn't see a pump failure or what caused that pump failure, but we do get a lot of information from all those lift stations. We see our wastewater plant, our water plant. We can see our levels of our water tower, of our ground storage tank. We see the chemical feed readings. All this is trended, and all this is important information right now, especially because it's part of our permit. We use it as part of our asset management program. And with our ability to trend that, we can use that information to see if the pumps are running efficiently, and if we see a pump that's running longer or not pumping as efficient as it should, then we can look at possibly budgeting for that replacement pump. I'm going to let John do his PowerPoint now. Okay, I'll let you. Just so you know, the reason I'm asking for this new VT system, we've had some problems retaining some of the information. We're losing some of our trending, our power trending, which is very important. We don't have that. It's slow. It'll come back and we'll be missing a portion of that trending. So if we lose it completely, it's going to make it very, very difficult to run our plant. It's possible for us to do it. We'll be visiting each building. We'll be visiting all of the lift stations and the water plant throughout the whole day. We have to make sure that process is working. It's going to make it more difficult to see the efficiencies of the pump. If we have to make changes, we're not going to see those. We're going to have to go out and visually and manually look at those DO probes, chemical feed pumps, and even the lift station pumps. So I think we're set to go. Yep. I'll let John take over.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you very much, Ron, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to present the SCADA system upgrade suggestion. I want to cover, Ron did a great job already explaining this slide here, but I'm just going to summarize it. 5 good reasons why you want to have a SCADA system. First thing is if something goes wrong, midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning. You're running 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. If something goes wrong, you want to know as fast as possible. You don't want someone calling you up saying, my basement is filling up. Can you guys take care of this problem? Or there's no water anymore coming out of our faucet. This is what the most important point is for Scada, is to give him the information, the alarm, so he can respond before it becomes a problem for your residents. The second thing is to help avoid water and wastewater system failure. Well, that's a system failure, but also failure where it's failing, but it hasn't, it's more anticipating a failure. Now you're using more water than normal because there's always leakage throughout your water supply system. Well, it starts to go up, and you want to know it's going up. You're using more water. You're still pumping it, but it's gradually and eventually in the middle of a winter, a really frosty day, and you got a water main breaking. And be able to anticipate some of that is helpful, as well as maintaining compliance. Obviously, you got to feed clean water into the rivers after you're done treating it, and being able to monitor all of that to maintain that. The third reason is for, as Ron mentioned, is asset management. To be able to see how many hours you've used those pumps, to know that after so many thousands of hours, this is a natural time to do a maintenance repair, and be able to know that and to say, all right, it's time to do maintenance. So asset management, it's a helpful tool to do asset management. And to provide the data to make the financial case for infrastructure replacement. So with all that data, and you know the ages, you know how many hours you've used things, you know it gives you information to do intelligent upgrades in asset management again. And finally, the last thing is this information can be put in a place where it can be visualized anywhere. It could be visualized to the city council. It could be here in this facility here where you can see what's going on, or maybe you want to see the overall facility and your water tower levels and movement. It might be interesting for some people to see all of that, because there's certainly a lot of infrastructure going on in the city. It's incredible what's going on underground in the city, and to see that is impressive. So those are 5 good reasons to have a SCADA system. Just to go over the existing system you have right now, you have 2 separate systems. One handles all of the lift stations and the water plant, and the other one handles the wastewater treatment plant. They're 2 separate systems. They evolved because things happened, not unlike building communities and you have a different pump like you have there, now evolved. But now that you have them, it makes sense to, and they both need to be upgraded, it makes sense to bring them together. Because now you got duplicate learning. They're 2 different platforms, 2 different softwares. You got to learn 2 of them. And then you got to maintain both of them. When you need to upgrade them, you need to upgrade both of them. So now you get one that does it all, and then you just need to upgrade one all the time. So that's what we're talking about here. The existing system, the current issues is the power monitoring. It monitors the power coming into the plant. It's not working reliably. The computer hardware is near the end of its life. It operates 24 hours a day. It's been operating for 6 years now on the wastewater plant. The software is out of date. There's no redundancy. If that box crashes, you lose all that valuable data to do good asset management. And so it's beyond its life. The second section for the water plant and the remote assets, the software is Wonderware. It's also installed in 2010, so the current issues are, again, very similar. 7 years of life. Software is out of date. Has no redundancy, again, backup, and then is beyond the typical life of the products. So we're recommending upgrading for those reasons. One option is just to take those 2 boxes, put new boxes in there, new Windows software, and the same software but in a more current version, and continue 2 separate systems. It's less expensive. And so the pros is it's less expensive. But the cons is you still have 2 boxes. If they crash, you lose all of the valuable data. So there's no backup. So the data is all vulnerable. And I say redundancy is, in the new system we're proposing, is that there'll still be 2 boxes, but if one crashes, the other one takes over, and it's just seamless. All he knows is one's crashed, but everything's still operating. So just like 2 pumps, it'll be 2 computers running, so one goes out, the other one backs it up. And so there's no smartphone access, so he can't, with the new system, he can actually see if there's an alarm, he can see on his phone what is causing that alarm. Therefore, he can respond appropriately. Maybe in some cases the alarms are not critical, can be dealt with during regular working hours. If the alarm is urgent, you can just, I got to get in there right away. So it saves, in some cases they'll save time, overtime, because they're coming in, they're intelligently responding to the alarms. Software continues to be difficult to use. They were designed for factories. These 2 softwares, they're Factory Talk and Wonderware, are predominantly used in manufacturing, less used in the water wastewater industry. Emergency response could be costly. We talked about that already. Data for asset management is difficult or unavailable to manage. It's actually much more difficult to get that data compared to the software that Ron wants now. And it cannot provide online visualization or a process to the public and city council to show you that. And it'll need to be upgraded every 5 to 7 years. And it's 2 separate systems, so double training, double maintenance, double upgrade cost every 5 to 7 years. So what is being proposed is the VT Scada, to replace the current computer boxes and software with on-site award-winning trihedral software. And I say award-winning, it really is the fastest growing Scada software in the market right now. And we're looking at an investment of $28,860. The pros is that now you have one software on 2 boxes. So if one of them goes out, the other one backs it up seamlessly, and then just replace the box, but the whole system is still operating. So you only have one package to upgrade in the future, so half the cost in the future. Provides all the features typically required from Scada today, so a fast response like we just talked about. But in addition to those 5 points I made earlier, it also provides automatic report generation. It can generate automatically a weekly report, a monthly report, a yearly report, and whatever information Ron needs so that he can react appropriately in maintaining his facility. It's much easier to trend and analyze, troubleshoot the kind of problems that he can experience out in his facility. It's got modern graphical screens, and of course only one software to run and learn. The downside, why this is more expensive than the others, is that all of it has to be reprogrammed, versus the other two, you use the programming and you upgrade the software. Now we have to totally reprogram to accommodate all of the changes on there. That's why this is more expensive than upgrading the old 2 systems. This option, Ron, this is an option that's less expensive. It's $17,870. I don't recommend it because it's got a subscription fee. Basically, what you're doing is you're buying it's in the cloud now. So you're not having to buy all the computers. It's all done in the cloud. All this information goes up into the cloud. And we do that for a lot of smaller communities where they can't afford to buy all the software. But you're going to have to pay, because you have so many items in your network, it's costing you $9,000 a year after that. And I don't recommend it, but I put it up there, just FYI. But I don't recommend that. That's more for a smaller community. Your community is too large, in my opinion, to go down this path. So I'm not going to spend more time on that, unless, Ron, you want me to spend more time on that. Okay. So this is basically what it looks like. You've got your 2 boxes and you can actually put 1 box here and 1 box at the wastewater plant if you want. Doesn't matter, as long as they're internet connected. And then if you have a fire there, you still have the system taking care of some of the stuff. So there are different ways to do that, but you can put them both at your facility. And then, of course, as soon as you have that, you're connected, and you can see all of the system from anything that's internet connected.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
Where would you put the server farm in what we have already as far as locations? Where would you do that?
Well, the server farm is really just 2 computer boxes that, as you see in this graphic here, in Ron's building. It's not in the cloud. The option I'm recommending is not in the cloud.
So it would be just 2 desktop computers.
You own the 2 boxes. You're basically the server farm yourself. The city is the server farm.
Okay, thank you.
So just to clarify, I mean, the other recommendation you made, where those boxes are kept in distinctly different physical locations, is advantageous in the event that there was a fire there. You certainly wouldn't want both of them located in the same building, or you lose the backup redundancy that you're, highlighting. So
that's common. What you just suggested is common. Yeah.
Yeah.
Put them in 2 separate buildings. Yeah.
Right.
One should probably stay here.
I'd like to ask, what's the life expectancy of this package? You said 7 years for the last go around. So
it's the same.
Yeah.
Life expectancy. Now, the only thing is when you need to upgrade, you're upgrading only 1 package now instead of 2, because you now have upgrading just 1 software instead of 2 softwares.
But I mean, is the loss of information that we've incurred now a hardware issue or a software issue?
It's a hardware issue on the existing systems, because you only have 1 box with absolutely everything in it. If a hard drive crashes, you lose all of it. Versus this proposed system, 2 boxes, they're mirrored to each other.
Okay.
So one crashes.
So they are each other's backup.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly, yeah.
Excuse me if I could. One of the key points that you're making, and just so it isn't lost, is right now, Ron, when we look at your preventive maintenance system, okay, for the assets, and how many assets do we currently have in your asset management package? How many? Ballpark, 10,000, 5,000 assets?
Probably 4,000 or 5,000.
4,000 or 5,000 assets that you're tracking, and that's in turn you're conducting preventive maintenance inspections on some of that equipment and so forth.
Yes, we have a preventive maintenance program.
Okay, I'm guessing, we haven't talked about it, the inspections are time-based? You go out every 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? How do you determine when you're going out to do it?
Or
Wrong time.
need hours run, it all is relative to time, yes.
Okay, and
Certain pumps and certain blowers.
Ron, could you step up to the mic, please?
Certain pumps, certain blowers, they require the maintenance at certain hours, 4,000 hours for our Kaiser blowers. So others would be time, 6 months. It all depends what we're looking at. But
so what I'm hearing in the presentation though is this is going to drive that asset management system. So that input for the hours would be input into the asset management system automatically, right?
It could be, yes.
Yeah.
It could be automatic. Right
Could be,
now,
or-
what we do is we input that
You key it in.
ourselves,
Okay.
and it'll spit out a maintenance a sheet, and we can do the maintenance.
So let me
We do have a
clarify.
program for asset management
Right.
right now. So
Will the SCADA program that's being proposed here interface with the asset management program?
no,
Okay.
it would not. No, not directly.
Okay,
But we would use this as
Sure.
part of our asset management.
okay,
But
Okay, I got a question.
thanks.
I got a question.
Carl?
Your system, okay, all over our locations in town, we have three-phase electrical, okay, coming in to power the units, okay, east, west, so on and so forth. Okay, plus we transform it to higher voltage as needed. What's going to support the whole system or keep it from all crashing if the three-phase electrical fails temporarily, okay? Which has happened many times.
I can tell you the towers we have now are on backup. They have a battery backup.
Uninterrupted power
Yes,
supply.
yep, correct. So if we crash, we still have that. We still hold the program, although our time would be limited, but it would give us enough time to hopefully
Go on, generator.
Yeah,
go
well,
on generator.
You've got generators in place.
We do.
When the three-phase electrical goes out, okay, they're supposed to kick in, but sometimes they don't because of corrosion, and then you got a serious problem for a little while, okay? Will this system pick up those kind of flaws
Before they happen, no.
as they're happening?
As they're happening, we could see that now. We can see a phase fail. At our lift station, we show a phase fail.
And power loss.
And power loss, yeah. So we would show that.
All
Thank
the
you, Ron.
stations indicate power loss.
Well, that's, okay, I never thought of it. If you can do that, that's a miracle, because we've never been able to do that, anything like that I ever knew of, and I've lived right close to it from time to time, okay, And,
Let me give you an example. 11-mile lift station. We have somebody that will feed the squirrels, and in the last month or two,
yeah.
we have had a squirrel get up into the power lines, and the fuse is blown. That gives us a phase fail at 11-mile. All the rest of the power in the subdivision surrounding that are fine, but it's just that one phase that seems to be that supports our 11-mile lift station goes out. So
And that would record in your office on Dixboro?
we see a phase fail and we respond.
But you'd see that on your screen on Dixboro?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Each lift station has a battery as well, so when you lose power, that battery has enough juice to tell the headquarters that we lost power.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, yeah, Meg.
Thank you. I just had a quick question. So much of this is now going, with internet. What's the hacking? What are the chances of hacking into these systems?
There are First of all, the software being recommended here has the highest level of security. It's all encrypted at a very high level, and it's number two is the system that he's using. The remote sites are all using the same PLCs that Israel uses in all their remote sites. Just Israel is very vulnerable to hacking as well. So his security level is quite high. Can I guarantee absolutely no hacking? No, but I can. I'll bet the price of this proposal you'll never be hacked, because we've got already 100. We manage 130 different cities, and we have about 35 of them that are now running through the internet with all their security. And I'm not the IT expert in our company, but they've put in all of the secure firewalls to protect you from hacking.
Where are you located?
We're located in Dexter, Michigan.
Oh, you're right here locally.
Yeah.
Okay. The other question I had is, what is the Windows that supports this? Is there a Windows?
So Windows, yeah, that's the most current window right now.
Pardon?
Yeah,
Windows
10. 10. Yeah, Windows 10. Yeah.
Okay, Windows 10 supports this system?
Yeah, it runs off Windows 10.
It runs off of Windows 10?
Yeah.
And did I read somewhere there where Windows 7 is what you're presently using? Yes. Is that what is causing the upgrade, or is it the additional software enhancements? What?
That's a good question. It's a combination of a number of things. Age of the boxes. But that software can cause a problem as well, too. It gets to a point where it's not supported anymore.
Well, that was going to be my point,
Yeah,
because 2 years ago, I got the notice that software 7 was not going to be supported, and so what they're doing is they're scaling back their support. So you have mainstream support that is being dropped, and then you only have emergency support. So my question, quite frankly, is why wasn't this done 2 years ago?
Well, right now you're not at risk. I'll answer that. You're not, because you're not connected to the internet right now.
But if part of the problem with the system was the operating system, which was Windows 7, and Windows 7 was going offline because everybody in the country was getting a notice, why didn't we do this 2 years ago? Why?
If I may, for a quick second, I'm not 100% on this, okay? But I'm quite sure that I think we're confusing Windows 7 with Windows XP. Not on our boxes, but in what was losing its support from Microsoft. So I just wanted to clear that up.
Yeah, it is XP.
Windows 7, as far as I know, is still being supported. Now, it won't be supported as long as 10, but I just...
No, I got the schedule. They're dropping the support schedule.
Okay, well, I may be wrong then.
Well, no, you could be very right. But I printed that off, the support schedule.
The danger is not so much that it's not supported. The danger is that it's vulnerable to hacking.
To the hacking.
Yeah, but right now, presently, your two boxes, because it doesn't have a lot of the features that Ron wants, it's not connected to the internet.
Right.
So no one can hack your two existing boxes today.
Okay.
So not as vulnerable. With this newer system, you're not vulnerable either for the reasons that we've put all the firewalls there, but now you have to be more careful with all of that.
Mm-hmm. Excuse me. Is the archived data going to be transferred into the new system?
No.
Okay. Do you have any concerns about that? No? All right. Okay.
Mary?
This might be a silly question, but what happens if what happens if we lose internet? Is everything, I know you said there's backup, but...
If he loses the internet, he's like he is today, until the internet comes back up again. In other words, he can't see it at home.
So you can't get it on your cell phone?
Yeah, he loses all those wonderful features now. His internet.
So someone will have to be on hand.
You're all vulnerable to that. If you lose
Operations
internet, you have to send
still
someone
work,
into the building.
Bells and whistles.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Good question.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Carl.
All right. A lot of it sounds very interesting and very, promising. Excuse me, but how much money is this going to save us, okay, in a 3 to 5 year plan? If we spent all this money on this system, how much money are we going to save on what we're already spending over 3 to 5 years down the road? Is anybody, fair question?
No, it's a good question.
Okay. And you've got a figure for that. We got to think about all that stuff in our decision-making process. You know what? We can't just throw money at darts on a circle, okay, and hope it saves us some money. We want to know, okay?
Yeah. Well, to answer is you need to upgrade now. So the comparison should be to upgrading what you already have. So therefore, are you going to save that difference over the next 5 to 7 years? First of all, in 7 years, when you need to upgrade again, you're going to need to spend the $15,000 to $20,000 again to upgrade the 2 separate boxes, as opposed to only one, so it'd be half that price. So there's already the difference almost in 7 years. Second is it gives you a lot of access into the field for these guys at home to see the data so that they can respond, and it'll save you some service time. And I can go back into the presentation here. It'll save you service time. It'll give you more data to do better asset management. Now, I don't know what those numbers are. I mean, I'd have to come up with Ron and come up with all those impacts. But the impact, just the fact that in 7 years you got to upgrade only 1 instead of 2 and all the learning curve is already enough to justify that difference.
Okay, well, we don't have a superintendent in this division at this time. We got Ron here, and he's very capable, and but I don't think he speaks for all employees. Okay, I'd like to hear from some other employees. Okay, before we make a decision to put this money out of town to bring this in on the premise that it's going to save us all this money in the future, okay? So we can know the other guy's opinions. How much are we losing? Disasters here and there. Would this help all those factors you see? Because I know I've seen just the padlock not being rusty on a gate, and you can't get in it. Holy smokes! Nobody oiled the padlock. How are we going to get in the gate? The computer didn't tell us that. You know, all kinds of things can happen. Okay. And here we go again. We've lost another $10,000 bingo. So I'm just asking you for some fair appraisal, okay? I think we ought to just have a little more time to look at it.
Mr. Mayor?
One thing that Ron is suffering is the stress of knowing that could go down on him, and now he's going to be in a lot of trouble. So at least there's the base system you ought to be looking at. Because if you lose that, you're back to the old days where it's people calling you, telling you it's not working, as opposed to the system telling you.
Thank you. Steve?
Okay, just as a point of information, the use of Scada for remote monitoring of the performance of assets has been around for quite some time. I've spent, my background again, I spent a fair amount of time in oil and gas exploration. This is used extensively in that industry, okay, for monitoring oil wells, looking at their performance, seeing if they're operating, monitoring for leaks so that you can react to them in relatively real time, in a real time period. That's the real advantage to having this and being able to monitor it so that, you know, you're not getting that phone call as somebody already mentioned and, you know, reacting to that after the sewage is backing up in somebody's basement. And the cost of that cleanup, you know, if you had a couple of those, and I don't know how many we've encountered from a city standpoint over the years, it only would take a few of those to eliminate the small variance that's between the two upgrades, in my opinion.
Split vote, I don't know.
Is there more material?
I was just explaining a little bit why Ron is suggesting that we be the sole source. It's the last slide.
Yep.
I want me to cover that. Is that just a little background on our organization. We're the largest Scada integrator in the Michigan area, and we do it for 130 municipalities. We know South Lyon very well. We've been working with South Lyon for a long time. And not just Scada system, we deal with the emergency transformer failure, because we're an electrical, we deal with all kinds of electrical emergencies, not just Scada in our organization. And so we've been doing electrical apparatus maintenance, we've been doing instrument calibrations, and the troubleshooting. If he has a really complicated electrical problem at 2 o'clock in the morning, our guys know your system. They know pretty quickly where to find that, as opposed to arriving on site and going, where do we start, not familiar with your system. So that's why he chose us for that. And we are giving you preferred pricing on this situation. I'm confident if you did go out, our pricing would be the lowest.
All right.
And then because we know the system. We know exactly all, versus someone else would not know it, would have to either guess and then add it on later.
Right.
You know? And it's very common for SCADA systems to be sole sourced in municipalities. Our more than 30 field techs are municipal water and wastewater experts. They average 23 years of experience, so that's one of the reasons why we do so well in this field. We spend 5% of our sales and equipment on training yearly, and we have a Michigan wastewater Class A licensed operator on staff. We have on staff SCADA engineers that write SCADA specs as well. And we believe that, based on a survey we do every 6 months, that we have the highest customer service rating in the industry. So we believe we're a very low risk choice for you to do this project.
I'm curious, has MIRMA been made aware of this transition, our insurance carrier? I'm just wondering if there might end up being a reward for...
That's a good question.
Have you got any idea, Lloyd, or, I mean, is there a way to reach out to them just to see?
I was not involved in the front end of this, but I could certainly make a call and check on the possibility of what I'm sure you've noticed what they call a RAP grant.
Yes, exactly. Right.
And there would be a possibility, certainly.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it certainly takes the onus, the burden of an event taking place without our notice off of their hands, so they're not exposed.
Ron, just as a point from the information that's here, I mean, this was already a budgeted item.
Yeah, right.
It was a budgeted item, yes.
It was all predicted.
This was done by the previous superintendent. We started experiencing problems, at least serious problems, before he retired. So even before July 1st budgeting, so.
Well, I appreciate you guys having the foresight to know that this needed to be looked at and taken care of before we had a major problem.
With that, I make the motion that we waive the competitive bidding process because there would be no advantage to the city in requesting bids from vendors who are unfamiliar with existing water and wastewater department SCADA systems.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. That was very
Make the
informative.
motion that we approve the upgrade for the of the water and wastewater department SCADA system as quoted in option 1 by UIS for the total cost of $28,860.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
I need to take a...
Thanks for
you.
that presentation.
Both of you, thanks for coming out.
Thank you, very good presentation.
Thank you.
Moving on to new business number 3, appointment of SEMCOG General Assembly Delegate and Alternate.
Mr. Mayor, I provided background information for council regarding prior appointments of the SEMCOG General Assembly Delegate and Alternate. I have listed the prior appointees and the primary duties of the delegates and alternates would be to attend 3 General Assembly meetings each year that are held in March, June, and October. So we're looking for a designated victim here and an alternate.
Winnies.
And of course, the delegate must be an elected official.
Correct. Maggie?
If you're short of individuals, I don't mind being an alternate, but I can't be I don't want to be considered as the delegate, but I would like to nominate Steve Kennedy, see if he would be interested.
Well, I certainly,
Yes?
I certainly appreciate the nomination, but I would probably respectfully decline it because my experience on council and with government operations, one day.
Well,
I would think that it would probably behoove us from a city's standpoint to have somebody that's a little more knowledgeable, a little more seasoned, perhaps.
it's not that critical. I spoke with the woman. It's not that critical. Basically, if you have a background in, it's a lot of engineering. It's a lot of data in terms of things that they do in southeastern Michigan in terms of transportation. Their meetings are kind of like this. They have a board. It's basically a lot of networking. It's only 3 meetings a year. It's not that big a deal. Means that. But you need to be available during the day and you're retired. Maybe something to get your feet wet, yeah.
To be quite honest, I had the same opinion. I wondered if you would be interested in being the delegate just because you seem so knowledgeable.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you could represent us quite well.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I feel like no means no. I don't want to peer pressure you.
Yeah, sorry.
So, if you said no, I think we stand by that. We should stand by that.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Again, looking at somebody that has more experience, such as Councilperson Parisian or perhaps Councilperson Kibble, if Councilperson Kurtzwell doesn't have the availability, maybe another alternative.
I wouldn't have any misgiving about doing it, except for the fact that they meet during the day, and that's, scheduling is, I can do it, it's just, it's taken me off my job, so.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll reconsider it. I'll take the nomination. Okay, I have the available time, and we'll
Okay.
give it a shot.
I move that Steve Kennedy be the City of South Lyon's delegate nomination for SUMCOG for 2018.
I'll support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
To the alternate.
Motion passes.
I'd like to make a motion for the alternate for the SEMCOG assembly be Ms. Kurtzwell.
I'll support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Just on a side note, although that is during the day, if I have the opportunity to tag along on that, I will. Moving forward, new business number 4, road closure for pint-sized marathon.
Mr. Mayor, before we get into this conversation,
Yes.
I would like to disclose that I do sit on the Footprint Fitness Board as a member at large.
Okay.
So I would not like to take part in this discussion.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rose.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Reif. I'm the director of Footprints Fitness. We're a nonprofit here in South Lyon. This is the 4th year doing the race. It's been a huge success. We appreciate the support of the city in the past, and we ask that the roads are approved as closed. We did the same route last year, and it worked out well. And we also ask that McHattie Park is included in that.
I just look at this as a formality. I don't know if anyone had any
Yeah, pretty
questions.
much, right.
Excellent race. It's
Mhm.
fun to run.
And we ask for some help promoting it, and also if any businesses are interested in sponsoring it, let us know.
Excellent.
Thank you.
So,
Well, we've got a road closure though, right?
yeah.
Yeah, so.
Chief, do you have any feedback on this?
Just to echo Ms. Reif's comments that it's been a very successful race. They've been very cooperative with us as far as safety issues and road closures, and I recommend approval.
Thank you.
Well, I make a motion, we approve the closure of Dorothy Street between Pontiac Trail and McMunn, McMunn between Dorothy and McHattie, McHattie between McMunn and Washington, Washington between McHattie and the rail trail on April 21st, 2018 between 11:30 and 2 p.m., and to approve use of the Witches Head Depot, McHattie Park, and rail trails for the pint-sized marathon.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Council meeting conduct, time limits, additional public comment. I would entertain a motion to table or postpone this to a different meeting in the event that I think we may have a lengthy council comment this evening.
Sure. Well, I wouldn't expect this to take effect tonight
Okay.
if we actually voted on it.
I was just throwing that out there.
Did you want me to speak to it, or did you want to wait?
Please go allow the discussion to start. I was wanting to just put that out there.
Sure. So I did some research and I looked at other communities in Michigan, Ann Arbor and Troy in particular, and their council comments, or their council conduct in general, I thought was very, very well done. They have a setup where they have 2 public comments. So individuals who come to the meeting can speak at the beginning of the meeting, and if you sit through the entire duration of the meeting, then you can speak again at the end. I think it's a good idea that people that sit in the meetings that have comments about issues that arise during the meeting, agenda items, they should be able to speak again a second time. In lieu of that, I think we should also put a time limit on how long people speak at public comment. So I think we as a council could come up with a time frame. It could be 2 minutes, it could be 5 minutes, it could be 3, find that happy medium. But an individual could come up at the beginning of a meeting, speak for 3 minutes to a topic. If they sit through the duration of the meeting, or if they don't, they can still come back and discuss at the end of the meeting their 3-second snippet that they're entitled to. Especially because there's so many times where people will come to a meeting and they listen to the topics and they want to engage, but they have no outlet to do so. They have to wait 2 weeks until the next meeting. And that doesn't seem logical. If you want to speak to an issue, you should be able to. With that being said, I also think it would behoove council to have a time limit on how we speak. We have some long-winded, myself included, council members who love to talk. And a lot of the times, if you listen, there's only a portion of what we're saying that actually is focused on the topic and is actually productive. So if we were to put a time limit on ourselves, give it 2 minutes, give it 5 minutes, whatever it might be, I think we could narrow down what we need to say, focus on it, get to the point, and make our meetings more efficient. So I think each and every one of us has that ability to bullet point what we need to say to every topic and get done what we need to get done. No grandstanding, no patting yourself on the back, things like that. So we can do away with all that, and instead of being here till 11:30 at night and having our listeners have to listen to 3.5-hour, 4-hour meetings, it's selfish for us to sit up here and just talk. So if we can scale that back, I think it would behoove us. We would be more productive. We would have an efficient meeting, and it wouldn't have to be placing a burden on individuals having to listen for 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever it might be. Along those same lines, Ann Arbor has a 3-minute per council member for each topic. So every council member can speak to a topic for 3 minutes. And then once every council member has spoken, they get a second turn to speak again for 3 minutes. So essentially everybody gets 6 minutes to speak. I think we should adopt something similar just for the sake of staying focused, keeping things relevant. And it's not a constitutional issue because everyone is still being afforded the right to speak. It's just kind of forcing you to be a little bit more direct and to the point. Thank you.
Maggie?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I do is I looked at these materials and I did some research, and I'm opposed to it. And let me sort of start with the issues. I think the couple of the areas that I saw that were highlighted was no member shall speak until recognized for that purpose by the chair. I don't know if you want that as a rule. A member may not speak more than 2 times on a given question. I saw that on here. And what I wanted to do is bring to council's attention that some of the issues that are being brought up are actually contained in Robert's Rules of Order, which the city of South Lyon does run its meetings by. So if we go to one of them, I think one was you can't talk unless you're recognized by the chair. Here it says in one of the rules, the chair must recognize any member who seeks the floor while entitled to it. So we do have a Roberts rule that does require that you don't speak unless the chair recognizes you. I haven't seen that as a problem on this council. In fact, I think everyone's been very respectful. I think, Dan, you're doing a great job. Next, we go to debate on the question. And if we go to debate on the question, it says, is that the chair should, this is something we're not doing, but I was going to work with Dan a little bit on a little bit of Robert's rules, is that under Robert's rules, when a person makes a motion, generally the chair turns to the person and says to the member to the left of me that made the motion, the courtesy is that you have the floor open to you and you can start debate. So they generally give the person who makes the motion the right to start the debate off. That's the one thing that we're not doing. It's not a big deal, but it is sort of Robert's rules in terms of how you sort of work the people in terms of handling debate. So you start with the person who first made the motion, start with them, and then Robert's rules says is that in the debate, each member has the right to speak twice on the same question, but cannot make a second speech on the same question as long as any member who has not spoken on that question desires the floor. So basically what Dan does is Dan has been following Robert's Rules of Order. If you follow Dan, when we start debate, Dan turns either to the right or the left, and he looks and sees who wants to speak down on that end, and then he turns this way, and we all raise our hands so he knows who is acknowledging to speak, and then we speak on this end. So that's your first round. Dan then again turns again to the left and continues to acknowledge. And I think what Dan is doing is providing an excellent opportunity for debate in this council. And I think people have been responsible with those opportunities clearly to speak. So quite frankly, the issues that were being raised are actually contained in Robert's Rules of Order. So I don't really see the reason to duplicate what Robert's Rules already provides. Additionally, we do have a rule, Robert's Rules that we can get to if it's needed, is the length of the time that a member can speak. Robert's Rules provides no more than 10 minutes unless the speaker obtains the consent of the assembly. So Robert's Rules sort of gives you 10 minutes to sort of talk back and forth, and I think tonight is a classic example why we needed that extra time, because we talked about the liquor ordinance. I think, Glenn, I don't know, maybe you talked for about 20 minutes, but it was a good discussion. And I would have hated to have that discussion closed off just because you had to follow the time limits. Carl, for example, brings up a lot of good conversation in terms of historical. And he doesn't do it all the time, but once in a while he's well beyond the 6 minutes, and I sit here and say, well, who cares? I'm learning something. So Robert's Rules has the rule to either close the debate because it's getting too long or too lengthy, and I can go over that with Dan, or Robert's Rules has the opportunity to extend the debate beyond 10 minutes. So I think what we have is just the basic rules. It's just getting familiar with Robert's Rules. Dan, I will tell you, people have said they just love the way you're running the meetings. And then what I did is I also contacted Ann Arbor and Troy, and I asked them why they set a time limit of 3 minutes to their speaking with respect to their council members. Ann Arbor, the woman was quite funny, and she said, if you had an agenda with 42 items on it, she said, I can assure you in Ann Arbor, you don't want them talking more than 2 minutes. And so she said, we had to set a time limit because our agenda has 42 items on it. I then called Troy and spoke to them. Troy's agenda was 147 pages long. They also had just pages and pages of items that they're going on. So the cities that you looked at are those that have extremely complicated agendas. I think this council has been moving extremely well. Dan, you're getting great credit for being open and providing council the opportunity to speak. And so I'm just going to post this just on the grounds that we have Robert's Rules to deal with it. And if we do need to make change because there's issues down the line, then we deal with it. But things are going very well. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, may I rebut?
Yes.
So I think we're relying on Robert's Rules. We've adopted them, but they're actually guidelines. If you look in most city charters, it'll say council conduct, and it'll give you a list of rules on how we engage in a particular city. City of Detroit has their own rules, Ann Arbor, Troy, etc. The reason why I'm saying this, and this is, again, something that's totally up to council. It's a suggestion that I had just because I can't tell you how many complaints I've gotten from residents that the meetings are too long. It's hard to watch. People have to break it up because it's just too long. And it's not that we're getting things done. It's more of us bickering back and forth and going back at each other's throats. And that was past administration. This administration seems to be doing a great job. But at the same time, we're still pretty long-winded, and we could still trim the fat. And let's move forward and really get to the point and focus on the issues at hand. If we were to do that, I think we would get more done. And a lot of times, our agenda is actually pretty hefty. So we're here till 11:30 at night. I don't have a problem with it. I signed up for this job. I'm okay with it. I just think that even just listening to people talk, we're cracking jokes about the Vikings. We're cracking jokes. Like, I don't think that stuff doesn't matter. Let's just get to the point and figure out what we're doing, focus on the agenda, and move the city forward. If you cut all that extra out, it would save us a lot of time, and it would save you a lot of time. There has been, if you look at past minutes from previous meetings, there's just like 4 pages of grandstanding just alone for one particular council member who will just talk for 4 pages on end. And it's stuff like that that we need to stop. Stop patting yourself on the back. Stop trying to promote yourself. Just focus on the issues at hand. And that's the whole idea behind this. So the idea also encompasses the mayor being able to grant you more time. So if we're up here speaking to an issue for 3 minutes and we say, you know what, I actually have a lot more to say. I did a lot more research. Mr. Mayor, do you mind if I have a few additional minutes? It's his discretion to say yay or nay. He runs the meeting. So it's not that it's structured so that you have to stay within this time constraint. It's just giving you the opportunity to stay focused, and the mayor can grant you additional time.
Maggie?
I'd like to speak on that so we can use Robert's rules. My only misgiving with the whole thing, I detest listening to the self-promotional nonsense that goes on routinely, but at the same time, much like the discussion that we had earlier, when it's an information exchange and there's back and forth, you're asking questions of somebody that is either an authority or their opinion will end up holding sway or be influenced by what the outcome of this decision would be, is a different story than listening to somebody give you the teaching moments and all the nonsense that we have to go through on a regular basis. So, and I think with that built-in extra being able to have the mayor grant, you make your case to the mayor and can be granted a little bit more relief there. If you do, because don't get me wrong, there's some important subjects need more than 3 minutes to be able to unfold the breadth of what the real issue is. And I don't think anybody's going to have any kind of misgiving about listening to the entire story before we end up allowing somebody else to opine. And so that's a different circumstance than the back and forth questioning thing. And I don't know exactly how that questioning thing goes, because typically I know that my own particular bent would be much like the comments that had taken place today. When you have a topic and you're trying to distill what the really important parts of something are, it might end up taking a little time of back and forth to really refine where that sweet spot is of finding what information we either have a difference of opinion on or we need to try to reveal what the real important part of it is. So, I'm not certain about that aspect of it, but I like the idea of trying to trim down things as much as we can. Thank you.
Maggie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do want to bring to the attention, this is a teaching moment, the resolution setting procedures for council deliberations, number 5, says all deliberations of council shall be governed by Robert's Rules of Order, including the most recent amendments, unless the requirements are waived by an affirmative vote of 4 council members. So we do have Robert's rules that are in place, and council seems to be following them very, very well. Dan seems to be understanding them very, very well. And, I think things are moving along fine. I just think that, You sometimes hear things that you don't want to hear, and people have opinions that you don't like. And I think that's just the way it is. That's the process that's evolved. Many people that I've spoke to absolutely love the city council meetings. They think they're extremely informative. They think that people have great opinions on this council. They like hearing the difference. I mean, as I always tell people, you know, if you had 7 people that thought alike, you'd only need 1 person in the middle to run the meeting. So you have 7 people because you have 7 different opinions. So I think that transparency sort of fits the program that we're following, and Dan's just doing a great job running the meetings the way he is, and I'd like to keep with this format, and if we need to make change down the line, then we do.
Go ahead, Carl.
I agree with Maggie, and I think we're coming along much better than in the past year or so. I think we're doing very good and moving right along with progress. And I believe the city of Ann Arbor City Council has a 12-man council. Chief Bogle, am I correct in that? I'm asking you to feed in. Don't they have a 12-man city council? Okay, all right. See, there's a big difference, you know, and time limits to talk, you know. Anyway, that's it.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Rose. Yeah, Rose.
You know, there's a lot of subjects that are coming up in that we have tabled to different meetings. You know, we have budget season coming upon us. We have, you know, just many things. We're going to come back to this ordinance on the liquor license. Some of these are very long-winded conversations. I'm going to be honest, I don't know all the information on them, and many people on this council seem to be very knowledgeable, and I want to hear what they have to say. I don't want to be cut off after 3 minutes and be limited knowledge, or have to keep going, can I get more time? Can I get more time? Perhaps maybe we follow the Robert Rules of Orders, and maybe we just gavel more if we need to.
Okay. Well, in that case, do we just want to keep this as a discussion? Because it sounds as though council is opposed to it. So instead of making a motion, should we just leave it as discussion?
I'm not opposed to it. I just...
Because we can tweak it, or, I mean, it's up to council. It's whatever council wants to do. So
I would entertain looking at it again down the road. I do agree with some of the things that Councilmember Walton brought up. Is we are going to have some lengthy things coming on here. Things since the overturn of council members, it seems to be moving along, although we've been here for a while tonight. It's not something that I think we should just completely dump, but maybe readdress down the road and see where we're at with these meetings.
So should we table it for 6 months? See where we're at?
Right.
Reassess?
Yeah. I think that we'd have a better chunk of what we're doing up here together as a team 6 months down the road.
Okay, that's fair.
Absolutely.
Mr. Mayor? Wonderful.
Yes, Tim.
Mr. Mayor, thanks. I believe there are 2 components, if I understood correctly and was listening and heard. There's 2 components. One would be a limitation on public comment, speaking time. I encourage you to entertain that. The rest of it is a prerogative of council. If you look around any of the communities in this area and almost throughout the state, they're going to have some type of limitation on the public comment. And there's usually a safety valve to get more time. And what that does is, from a best practice standpoint, it insulates the city from having to play favorites after comment has started. So, for example, if you had a controversial, say the liquor license is very controversial, you have a room full of people that want to talk on it. What that does without a rule is it puts the chair and the mayor in a position where he has to announce that and remember to announce it ahead of time. And having a rule that you could print on the bottom of your agenda that just says what the parameters and the conditions and limitations on speaking publicly at the public comment section is always very helpful. Yeah. I think that's a best practice I would like to see this council adopt. I know we've seen resistance to that in the past, but I would encourage council to entertain.
I'm glad you brought that up, Tim, because actually one of the things that I liked, and this goes back to when I first started coming to meetings, is, and Mary, you made this point, sometimes you get a chance to speak, something happens during the meeting, and you got to wait 2 weeks. I'm certainly in for entertaining the second public comment as well.
That's very attractive, absolutely.
Yeah. So I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Mary.
Okay, so if we were to do that, and what time frame would you suggest? Is 3 minutes sufficient?
3 minutes is a very standard.
Okay.
And you
I've heard of
can
that.
always build in a safety valve to allow more time. If it's a controversial issue, the chair of the meeting can always say, if there's groups of you that have the same point, if it's a neighborhood issue,
Right.
designate one person to speak, and you can give more time as a group if they acknowledge that.
Right.
There's different ways to handle that, but I think if you pick any of your surrounding communities and look at their council rules or the agendas themselves, they put the rules on the public comment, including a time limitation on their agendas type thing, or at least have that notice available.
Who bears the burden of the time? So I suggested either Lisa or the mayor, but I also don't want to be the one to speak for them. So it's up to you who you think.
In what I've seen of this, that's actually, it would be one of us that I've seen. Go ahead, Tim.
Well, there's a sweep hand on that clock, right?
I've not seen it come into play all that often. You'll know when you're going to need to use it, and you can make different arrangements. In a typical meeting like today, you're not going to need to use that. You're not going to get comments beyond 3 minutes in a public comment portion of your meeting that's non-agenda related. That's the other issue, is whether this city has always had a practice of allowing the public to speak on each agenda item as it comes up, rather than forcing any of those comments to a public comments section or portion of the meeting. But, these are things that need to be or can be decided by council, and I encourage the time limitation, and I certainly think the comments thus far are good on this second public comment portion at the end of the meeting.
Dan?
Yes.
I don't know about anybody else, but
I can easily
my
set up a
phone's got
timer
a
on it
stopwatch
too.
on it.
I have no problem with doing that. I can't imagine how hard it is to take minutes at these meetings. I would really be reluctant to ask Lisa to do anything more.
I know.
Sure.
That's
So
why I don't want to
I would
place
have
a
no
burden on you.
problem just digging it out, set up the timer, and go.
I'm more interested actually in making sure that at the end of the meeting, though, that people have an opportunity to respond to what had been conducted right before them if they were in here.
Right.
So I can imagine how frustrating that might be for people to have listened to something that they either agreed with or disagreed with pretty strongly, and they couldn't bring that point forward.
I agree.
I have one more question.
Mary?
So, Attorney Wilhelm, do you think that we should place the public comment for the end of the meeting before manager's report or before council comments?
I
Where do you
think
think
before
that?
council comments makes the most
Yeah,
sense.
because if the manager
Okay.
says something, that they get
That's
up
true.
in arms.
That's
Right.
true too.
And then council
But then
would be.
you can make that argument for council, like say council says something, or does council get the final say at the end of the night before we adjourn?
I think there's no right or wrong. You're going to see it done a bunch of different ways, whichever you can agree on, if that's something you're inclined to do.
Okay.
Yeah, I think before council comments.
You may want to take a look around and see how others, set up their agendas for that type of thing.
I think
Give you
I'd
a
like to
sense.
look and see what
Yeah.
other municipalities are doing.
Yeah. Okay. I would like to make this something that goes into effect soon, though, because I think it's only fair if you're going to come to a meeting and sit through the meeting, you should be able to have a voice at the end as well. So I would love to see this go into effect relatively soon. Since I brought it to the table, I can do more research on it. But I would like to see this go into effect soon.
If we're just talking about the public comment parts, I think we should all entertain being able to talk about that at the next meeting. And then I think we maybe look at the meat and potatoes of the council stuff a little bit further down the road.
I think that's reasonable.
Very good, very good.
Maggie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think if we're going to talk about public comment, we should also add, let's work with all of public comment. Let's deal with public comment at the beginning. And I thought that we did have a rule, which was 3 minutes, that each person was allowed to speak anyway. And generally, what the program is that you would say, is there anybody here who has anything to comment on that is not on the agenda? So that means all non-agenda items were addressed by the public at the public comment session. And then it was always my understanding that council provided an opportunity for the public to comment on any item on the agenda as it was brought up, just like Ryan did tonight. Now, if that is different, then we probably need to talk about it.
Right.
But I think that's probably, we should also include that in on the discussion. And then talk about your public comment at the end of your meeting. So let's address all public comment issues at the next meeting.
Do we have a motion for that?
I'll make the motion that we discuss all public comment conduct and procedures for our next city council meeting come the first week of February.
I'll support.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Now, Mary, did you want to make a similar motion on the other part of that?
Sure. I make the motion that we postpone council conduct regarding time limits and public, or I guess not public comment, just time limits for 6 months from this meeting, so that would put us at the end of June. So the second week in June, we'll readdress this issue.
Second week or second meeting?
Second meeting of June 2018.
I'll support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Budget.
Council conduct.
Are you going to address this?
I can preliminarily address it
If you could, yeah, that'd be helpful.
in that Lori Mosier and I have physically met with two people. Mr. Jim Graham, the former assistant superintendent of South Lyon Schools, and Mr. James Vitrino, a consultant who is also the former city manager for the city of Rochester. We had meetings from both, obtained proposals from both, and as late as today, following at least 2 different phone conversations with Plant Moran, received a proposal from Plant Moran regarding budget assistance. So my plan was to get back perhaps in the next weekly report to summarize those proposals from the 3 parties or entities that we talked to and make a recommendation on how we can proceed. But we were not ready, given the timing of the proposal from Plant Moran, to proceed beyond that today.
Still nice to see you're moving in the right direction. That's good. It only took 1 meeting to do that.
Margaret?
Just some questions. Have you started asking various commissions to start sending?
Started, yes. Completed, no. And part of the reason for that is our top priority right now is the interviews for the utility and water and DPW superintendent position, which is happening Wednesday. So it's a juggling act.
I just feel that we're a little bit behind the 8 ball. I mean, you know how I feel about it, but
I do, and I understand that. In the past, we have department heads and commissions have not even been expected to have their preliminary budget request into the city manager until February, and until prior to the last 2 to 3 years, that timing worked out well. Council was always given a reliable budget document in a timely manner, and council had their workshops and had no problem with getting the budget approved within the statutorily required time frame.
I would disagree with you on some of that. I think that I have looked at the budgets, and they have not been necessarily as detailed. They have been rushed. Most communities work on their budgets 9 months out of the year. Just because it's been done doesn't mean that it was a good practice. And I think what I'm trying to do is to work with budget issues so that there is a change in the manner in which the budgeting process occurs so that we don't have the blow-ups and we don't have the issues. We don't have a 3 to 5 year plan. 3 to 5 year plans don't get in budgets in 60 days. So some items probably won't be addressed in a 5 year plan. I don't even know if we're going to get a 3 year plan this year.
Excuse the interruption, the 3 to 5 year plans, just working from memory, were part of the discussion and part of the proposals from 2 out of the 3 entities that we spoke with.
Okay. As long as we're just staying on it, it's just making me a little nervous that, you know, there's so much to be done in that budget. I have pages and pages and pages of questions that I need to sit down with somebody. And I think also whenever that decision is made, you know, by the time we make that decision, it's going to be the first meeting in February, correct? So that's the...
Before council could officially make that decision, absent a special meeting, that would be correct.
So we're looking at making a decision on who's going to handle our budget, how it's going to be done, February 12th. And February is a short month.
However, in the interim, nothing will preclude me from requesting preliminary budget submissions from council or from department heads and commissions.
Okay, if we appoint somebody, I'm just letting you know the timeline. We appoint somebody February 12th, they start working. We are about 2 weeks away from March, and March is when we have our workshops. You use April to go back and do your amendments. May is your month in which you adopt. It's a short timeline, but I understand. I understand.
Does anyone have anything else on the budget? With that, we'll move forward to the manager's report.
So do I get 3 minutes or 10 minutes?
As much time as you want.
It won't take nearly that long. Council received the weekly report again this week, so I won't try to cover everything that's in there. In fact, I just covered part of what I was going to say as far as speaking with Mr. James Vitrano, Mr. Jim Graham, and Plant Moran. The other thing I very briefly addressed is that arrangements have been finalized with the panel members and candidates for the position of the Utility and Public Works Superintendent. Interviews are scheduled for Wednesday, January 24th. Candidate interviews will be followed by individual tours of the DPW water and wastewater facilities.
You know when you'll have a recommendation?
It will be very soon. It'll certainly be before or at the next meeting in February, but it could be before that because we have a very short list to work from. There's a possibility that we'll be recommending a candidate based on the interviews Wednesday. There's also a possibility that we'll be in a position to say that none of the candidates that were available to us based on the resumes submitted are acceptable, and then we'll have to come up with a plan B for that.
I was just hoping that in the event that you found somebody that you really thought was a great fit, I certainly won't have any opposition to the idea of us getting together to simply confirm that. So,
and I would certainly welcome council input and want council input, even though the actual hire is a manager responsibility. I'd be more comfortable at least getting a vote of confidence from council.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
More important to me than council's input is Bob Martin going to have any type of role in this?
No.
Really?
Bob helped the city manager review the initial applications, but due to some personal issues and some issues with his current employer, Bob was actually more comfortable not participating in the actual interviews.
That's understandable. Thanks.
Nate?
Yes, I thought that was a city manager hiring decision, that you did not need council's recommendation. I mean, it's like with Chief Vogel.
That was my statement. I technically would not need council's authorization to make the hire. I would be more comfortable receiving at least some input from council.
Well, I would, if you find a candidate, and the candidate's very good, and the candidate's been waiting to be interviewed, and the candidate's out interviewing it with other people, and you think this is the one, I would hate to lose that candidate, because you got to round robin everybody. I mean.
Absolutely, and if council is confident in the decision that I might make, and perhaps council could authorize me to work with the city attorney, and that if we do find an outstanding candidate, we could negotiate a salary in terms of employment, because it's a non-union position, with a selected candidate.
I'd hate to lose the candidate. I think you have to use your best judgment, and if this is a candidate that clearly fits all the criteria, it's been 6 months. Get this off of dead center and get this individual hired. I don't need to, that's what you're here for.
I'm certainly very willing to do that if that's council's desire.
I can't speak for council, that's just me. But that's the business side of me.
Does anyone else have anything for the manager's report?
Just a comment. Obviously, this is the first report that I've seen, and from sitting in the back of the room for a period of time and watching what's taken place, I don't get the impression that a documented report like this has typically been provided. Okay, so I think this is an excellent document to help keep the council members apprised of what is being addressed, the actual state of progress, and helping to ensure that things don't fall through the cracks. And I commend the chief for putting this together.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Yeah, thank you. I've been asking forever. Thank you.
I remember that. You didn't have to ask me twice.
This is really, really nice. I appreciate it. Thank you, because it's
I do have a quick informational item or two. And council has it in their packet, but just for the public benefit, Depot Day 2018 at the Historic Village has been approved for Saturday, September 8th, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. So I encourage people to stay up to date on that and attend it. It's a very good and interesting annual event. And also in council's packet was a thank you email from a citizen to Phyllis Poprovsky, our utility billing person, thanking her for her patience and knowledge in explaining water billing. And we're quick to acknowledge complaints against our employees, and I think we should also recognize when a citizen takes the time to send a thank you. So thank you, Phyllis, on behalf of at least the administrative office. And that's the end of the report, unless council has any additional questions.
Thank you, Chief.
Oh, I might have one more quick thing.
Go ahead, Chief.
And again, it's just it's highlighting it. It's already been done. Council did have an inquiry regarding the property, the rental property at 464 South Lafayette. It had not been done previously, but I have authorized Ron Brock to obtain 3 bids for roof repairs to get that project moving.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
With that, we'll move on to council comments. Glenn, what do you feel about kicking us off tonight?
Well, the roof situation at that property in McCaddy was one of the things I wanted to ask about. That I know that nothing has taken place after, it was said to have been moved forward. So I'm glad that you hopped right on that. I also wanted to thank you for. I had asked City Manager Ladner a number of times about trying to get logins and passwords for some of the people in the office. As it turned out, it was the clerk treasurer, the assistant clerk treasurer, the bookkeeper, the code enforcement officer, and the DDA economic development director that didn't have them. And so now you've addressed that and everybody is up and running. So they have the ability to go and modify the city website of any erroneous information or add things. So I'm really grateful that you hopped on that really quickly.
And everyone is scheduled for updated training also.
Yeah, that's
Great.
very good. That's actually all I had. Thank you.
Mary?
Okay, so I actually have a few things I wanted to address. I wanted to first dispel any ideas that Ms. Joyce Klahusi may have. I think Ms. Klahusi is under the impression that regarding Councilman Richards' comment about her and her family, that affected her getting the job or being selected as council member. And I just wanted to dispel that idea because, in my opinion, I don't think that was a factor at all. And if you take that comment out completely as if it never happened, there were multiple factors regarding Ms. Klahusi's application, as well as the fact that she lied on the record. When she submitted her application, all of the candidates were asked to submit 3 references, and she only submitted 1. That right there was simple, basic directions that are rudimentary, and if you can't follow those directions, what can we expect you to do on council when it comes to following basic directions? Secondly, she was asked on the record by me whether or not she had any personal or professional relationships with any members currently sitting on council. That question was asked to Ashley Enstad as well, and Ms. Enstad answered that question open and honestly. She didn't think that there was any connotations, that there was a relationship there. It was mostly just, hey, do you have any friendships on council, or do you have any professional relationships? It could be financial, it could be maybe they helped you with your campaign, it could be you work for them. It doesn't matter what it is, and I personally don't care. I just wanted to know if you do, because I thought it was odd in the application that her flyer when she ran for council was almost to a T the exact same flyer as Councilman Richards and Councilwoman Walton. It was almost the exact same flyer. The only difference was the literature, and even the literature, the language of the literature was just almost spot on. So for me, that raises a red flag. Well, if it must be either a crazy coincidence that you all 3 have the same flyer, so that sparked me to ask the question, do you have a business relationship? And Ms. Klahusi said no. Okay. But then also doing a little bit of research, and from actually hearing from Ms. Walton herself, they are good friends. So that also is a personal relationship. A friendship doesn't have to, a relationship to me doesn't have to be just a friendship or a husband-wife relationship, whatever it might be. It's anything personal. And Ms. Enstad, when she was asked the very question, she was very open and honest. I've met each and every one of you on a personal level. Ms. Parisian, you helped me with my campaign. Ms. Kurtzwell, you helped me with my campaign. So she was very honest. She understood the question. I think Ms. Klahusi was caught in a lie, and she panicked, and now she's trying to change the story into thinking that I was asking about a personal relationship between her and Ms. Walton. And that's neither here nor there. I don't care if you have a relationship, good for you, but that's still something you would need to disclose during an interview. If my husband came and said, you know what, I want to sit on council, I would need to disclose, oh, my husband's running for council. I don't know if that's a factor or not, but that's something that you need to disclose. Given the fact that Ms. Klahusi was asked that question and she failed to respond with, yeah, you know what, I actually am friends with Rose. And actually, you know what, I do have a political, I ran my campaign with other people on council. She lied and said no. And I also find it disturbing that Councilwoman Walton didn't step up and say, hey, wait a second, you know what, I actually do have a relationship with her. We go to brunch every Sunday, we hang out, we got pictures on Facebook together, we're besties. You know, that's something you should probably disclose. Even if she didn't, Councilwoman Walton, that's your job to step up as well. So in both my eyes, that the credibility is lost. Now that's a knock against you. I don't want you sitting on council if you lied in an interview. I'm sorry, but that's just the name of the game. So those are my reasons for that, and also want to dispel the fact that, Ms. Klahusi, you're not going to be known as the woman who had a baby. There's other things that you're probably known for in the community, I'm sure. So that's not one of them. And then also I wanted to address, I'm super confused with the phone call, because I am under the impression that Ms. Walton, you called me. So I actually reached out to Ms. Walton and sent her a text and said, hey, you know what, I actually have something I want to discuss with you. Do you have a moment? And in full disclosure, I spoke with Councilman Kivel and I spoke with Mayor Pelchat about an issue that's coming up down the line that I think is really important, and I want to bring it to council relatively soon. And I wanted to fill Ms. Walton in as well. So as a professional courtesy, I reached out and said, hey, you know what, there's something I want to discuss with you. I don't know how I became your scapegoat. I don't know what the issue is and what Ms. Klahowski is talking about. Blackmail? I'm pretty sure that the discussion I had with you guys about the CIP has nothing to do with blackmail. So I don't know where this is coming from. I have no idea what you're talking about. I just wanted to fill you in on a discussion that's coming through the pipeline because some of us are coming here to actually work, to move the city forward. I don't care what your friendships are. I don't care what your relationships are. As far as I'm concerned, good for you for having friendships. That wasn't an issue at all. That discussion didn't come up. The discussion about Ashley and her Facebook post, that was something that came up at the end of the conversation. So I think you trying to throw me under the bus for something I didn't do is unprofessional. And again, it goes to your credibility. If you can't speak up and say, you know what, we have a relationship, we have a friendship, whatever it might be, this just goes to show you that now I'm being used as a scapegoat, and that's not fair. Everyone who knows me knows that I'm a very open book. You can ask me anything, and I'm going to tell you exactly how it is and exactly how I feel about it. So if I have something to say, it's going to be said on the record. So I don't appreciate being your scapegoat, and I think that that's something that you need to pick and choose your friends. I'm not sure how this came about or who put that in your ear, but that's not at all the case. So I think that's really disrespectful. So on to more important matters. Thank you, Phyllis, for your hard work. Congratulations to Cindy Conrad, who was just promoted to Master Firefighter. That's exciting. And Austin Trudell, congratulations on being a cadet firefighter as well. We also received the annual reports. So Police Department, you did an excellent job, as well as the Fire Department. I know Chief just walked out, but congratulations to both of you. You guys did an excellent job year after year with your reports.
Thank you. Chief Vogel did advise me he was going to have to leave because he has to be up at 3 a.m. for a business engagement of some type.
These meetings tend to run long. I totally get it. So thank you again. And with that, have a good night.
Thank you, Mary. Steve?
I'd just like to say that, first meeting here, I'm honored to be a member of the South Lyon City Council and to be part of it with 6 excellent individuals. Look forward to helping the city address the challenges we face. Hope my background experience will be instrumental in helping us all work together to move it forward.
Thank you very much. Yep. Carl?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to mention that, our function here as a group collectively, we're the last line of defense, in a manner of speaking, for financial decisions and what to purchase and what not to, and how to spend and budget our money. We're like the boys bailing out the boat to keep the boat afloat, and that's what we're trying to do, okay, is keep this boat afloat and keep it going. We're going to have to make changes in the coming year as we go along. And on a milder note, I want to say Larry Ledbetter and I were standing on the porch of the Butch's Hatme Freight House when the meteor came through. Whammo! And the place lit up. We thought the circuits blew out in the whole village. At first, because we were dazzled, it was such a bright light, okay? And then we saw the lights were really on again, okay, or they never went out. Made an optical illusion almost. And then the rumbling came in, okay, from a distant rumble, never heard anything like it. Quite an experience, and just lucky, I guess, that I happened to be outside at that moment in time. And I like to look forward on, holy smokes, I like to look forward on topics that I want to make sure people understand. I don't stabilize the boat and work for change and not cause problems, okay? And save money. That's what I want to do, not squibble about things. Thank you very much. I'm done.
Thank you, Carl. I don't know if we can accept a public comment at this point.
That's not necessary.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Lair. Next meeting.
Yeah.
Mrs. Walton.
Sure. I just want to thank all those that ran for the vacant seat on council. It does take a great deal of courage to submit a resume and stand up publicly and be, interviewed for a city position. Congratulations to Steve. I really look forward to working with you. You have a great deal of knowledge, and I've already learned so much from you just from listening to you talk.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I can't wait to see what comes next. Ms. Parisian, I'm not even going to go into this. You called me. You asked me to call you on Friday. I did. The entire conversation, you asked me to state that I'm a liar and that I lied. You know that the definition of a lie is an intentionally false statement, and a liar is a person who tells lies. I didn't do either, and I'm not going to entertain this conversation. Congratulations to Master Firefighter Conrad, and congratulations to our new cadet firefighter, Austin Trudwell. And everyone have a great night.
Thank you, Rose. Maggie?
First and most importantly, I would like to thank Joyce Cloesy and Ashley Onstead for their comments tonight. Your voices were heard by me, and hopefully you were heard by those who needed to hear you. To begin, the candidate interviewing process was flawed and it was unfair. Everybody knows the first rule in interviewing is that you ask the same question to each and every candidate. This was not done by the City of South Lyon. Further, all questions to be asked should have been submitted ahead of time to ensure the appropriateness of the question, and that all council members should have been instructed that unless the question had been pre-approved, there would have been no free throwing of questions. We do have an example of the unfairness of the interview process. Councilwoman Parisian asked only two of the candidates, and they happened to be the women, if they had personal relationships with any member of City Council. I'm not quite sure what the relevance is of that question, and many people have made interpretations of what a personal relationship is. And if Joyce Cloesy answered it the way she did, she was truthful. And Councilwoman Parisian needs to be very careful about calling people liars, because Joyce Cloesy did not lie. Her interpretation of a personal relationship was an intimate relationship that she had with her husband. I know Joe Rosie. He sat on this council, but I would not under any circumstances admit that I had a personal relationship with Joe Rosie. It all depends on who is interpreting the word. And if Mary Parisian wanted a different answer, then she could have used a different word. All she had to say was, do you have a friendship? A friendship is a very different connotation than saying, I have a personal relationship. And I find it very interesting that Councilwoman Parisian only asked the women that particular question. To me, that revealed her bigotry. That revealed her inability to be fair to all of the candidates that were running for the vacancy. She didn't ask that question of the men. It was only asked of the women. So, to me, when you engage in the interviewing process, if you're not fair to everybody, then I have to ask myself, why are you not being fair? What is the advantage that you want to give somebody? Because it's very easy to be fair. Very easy. And I want to also dispute Mary Parisian's conclusion that Joyce Cloesy was here tonight because somehow she felt that maybe she didn't get the position because of some of the questions that were asked to her. I don't think that is what Joyce Cloesy is talking about. I think what Joyce Cloesy is saying, you can pick whoever you want. I don't care who you pick. We had 4 candidates. They were all very good. But when you interview a candidate, you need to be appropriate with the questions you're asking. And that, Mary Parisian, you're a lawyer. You were totally inappropriate, and you are an embarrassment to this council. I just want to let the public know that Mary Parisian is now laughing at my
It's
comment.
hilarious coming from you. It really is. It's funny.
Mary, you're laughing at a very, very serious topic.
It is.
Excuse me, you are laughing at a very serious topic as to the image of this city and its ability to fairly and honestly interview people to be sitting on city council. So the interviewing process was not fair. I don't think anybody who saw the tape thought it was fair. But it is what it is. And what we do is we move forward and we learn to institute some processes so that should this happen again, we have a fair and honest process in terms of giving all candidates an equal opportunity to answer the same question. Next, as to the comments, did you just have a baby? Mr. Richards, the only thing that I will say to you at this time is that I listened to your apology, I heard it, I don't accept it completely because I need to see that your belief system that gave rise to your questioning of Joyce Clohessy and William Powell has changed, not just your words. It's the actual belief system itself. That question, Mr. Richards, had this been an employment situation, would have been prohibited. And also, Mary Parisian's question, do you have a personal relationship? Any question in an interview that connotes requesting of sexual orientation is prohibited in an interview. The person who most embarrassed the city, quite frankly, was not Carl Richards.
I didn't ask that.
It was Mary Parisian, a lawyer. That is the person who most embarrassed the city. Because if anybody should have known the appropriate method, the appropriate questions to ask, it was probably a lawyer.
Mr. Mayor, can I rebut
Excuse
that?
me, next
May I
as
re-
to
No,
Dan
I'm asking the
no,
mayor. I'm speaking to the mayor.
No.
You
May
will
I
have a
rebut
chance.
that?
You will have a chance to speak
No,
when
you
she's
have a
done.
chance.
Thank you.
As to Dan, with respect to your laughter at the questioning, my only comment is, Dan, is that you work with an employer with a lot of women. And I spoke with some of your coworkers over the weekend. It may not have come off the way you intended it to be. It may have been a nervous laugh, but the optics were there. And for somebody working in a predominantly female field, it hurts when you see someone laughing at your right to be able to bear children, have a job, and not have those issues held back on you. You're a leader for the city, but you're also an employee of a substantially female employment-based industry. And to those women, I said to them and said, you know, we're all going to learn from this. Everybody's going to learn. And that's the only thing that we can do at this point. But I will tell you one thing about discrimination, one thing about things that are inappropriate, and one thing clearly for Joyce Clohessy and maybe for William Powell, is that you never ever forget when you've been discriminated against. You never forget when it happened, and you never forget who did it to you. And one thing you never forget is how you felt. I think Joyce Clohessy will feel for a very long time how embarrassed and humiliated she felt when she was asked certain questions that were highly, highly inappropriate. Frankly, I don't know if there are any apologies that you can give to Joyce and frankly to Mr. Powell for the embarrassment and the humiliation that was extended to them. Miss Clohessy was pretty upset tonight, and she had every right to be. So where do we go from here? Well, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to continue to go out there, continue to advance the appropriate rights of women in the workplace. I'm going to continue to work for women in public office. And I'm going to continue to speak out against women that attack and do not support women in the workplace or in public service. This week and the next week, I'm going to meet with the female employees here in the city and make sure that they understand that they are welcomed and that they are appreciated. I want them to know that I want to encourage them and support them in their careers with the city. And their careers in the city mean that they have families and that we appreciate the time that they are giving to the city. And on that journey of meeting the women, I want to be able to thank our male employees for their professionalism and respectful treatment that they have shown to others of a different gender and maybe a different lifestyle. So to all the employees of South Lyon who have been affected by the events of last Thursday, I personally ask you to ride this out and to stay with the city. I am with you. I will listen to you, and we will get together and we will move forward, and there will be a change in the culture in the city and on this council, and we will move forward. As I always tell people, there is a reason we have tomorrow. We have tomorrow because we learn what we did today, and tomorrow we do it better. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I would like to save your time to respond to the inappropriate Mary Parisian on council.
Mary?
I just wanted to come out and say that I think you're misunderstanding what's actually happening here. There's no one's disputing the fact that that comment was terrible regarding her family. Yes, that should never come up in a workplace. That's not the point. Everyone knows that was an inappropriate comment, and I acknowledge that as well, just like everyone else. I just think it's laughable to me that you think that we're that dumb that asking if someone has a personal or business relationship has this negative connotation that I'm asking whether or not you have a sexual relationship or whether you're a lesbian. That's not what I asked at all. You're taking my words out of context. That is not at all what I asked. It's perfectly natural for someone to say, hey, do you have a professional or business relationship or a personal relationship with someone sitting on council? Because I have the sneaking suspicion that there is a relationship. Given the documentation that was provided, it's a valid question to ask, hey, you know what? This is the exact same flyer as 3 other people. I already gave this explanation. So I don't understand why I'm being attacked. And you guys are telling me that I'm an embarrassment and a disgrace when these are valid questions. Her application, she submitted a flyer that she ran on that matched the exact same flyer Carl Richards as well as Rose Walton had. The exact same flyer. So that raises a red flag to me and says, hey, you know what? That's a question you should ask her. Does she have a relationship? Maybe they ran together. Maybe they're a package deal. There's nothing wrong with that. But I just wanted to know, because if that's the case, and we have 3 people sitting on council who ran together, that tells me there's going to be 3 like minds, and there might be an alliance, and that might not be what the voters want. So for me, that raises a red flag, and the question I asked was completely valid. I think you're taking my words out of context. And even so, let's just say they actually had a personal relationship. Good for you. I'm proud of you. Happy relationship to both of you. It's just something that you need to disclose on the record. If someone asks you a question, just be honest about it. There's no reason to hide it. Again, there's no judgment, and I know they're both happily married, or one of them is happily married, but there's no reason to hide that. And when you lie, there's usually an impropriety that's happening. So you lied in an interview, and that automatically makes me feel like, you know what? What else are you going to lie about on council? Your credibility is shot. That's step number 1. Maggie, again, I don't understand why you're attacking me. I know you're an attorney. I know the ins and outs of what you do, and I don't care one way or the other. I think you're a professional, and I'm a professional, and we should just continue to be professional. You telling me that I'm an embarrassment is laughable, because there's many things that I could sit up here and spout off about you and the things that you've done and the good people you've chased from their positions because of the things that you've done. And I'm not going to sit up here and attack you because, again, we are supposed to be a team. We're supposed to be better than that. We do not need to fall back into this. Again, I'm not sure why I'm your scapegoat. I'm not sure what's going on here, but I think I hit the nail on the head, and I think there's a little bit of tension now that maybe I hit something. Maybe I hit a nerve. Is that what it is?
Mr. Mayor? Yes, I'd like to respond. Mary, I'm not quite sure what's going on with you, but the people that watched that interview, and when you asked about a personal relationship, clearly, everyone who saw it felt that you were asking about a sexual orientation. There was no wavering at all. So what you have is an interpretation of how that word was used. And if Joyce Clohessy interprets it differently than you do, that doesn't mean that she's a liar. It just means she had a different interpretation of what you thought that answer should have been.
Then how do you explain business relationship?
A business relationship to me can be defined by many things. I work on a lot of campaigns, but that doesn't mean I have a business relationship with anybody. I don't get paid.
I think you're a good attorney, Maggie. I really do. I think you're a good attorney.
I'm an excellent attorney.
I think you are.
But I will tell you, Mary, Joyce, the campaign literature, for that, I would love to have Joyce Clohessy come here and answer your question. And you will find out that she was not lying.
I would love that.
But she doesn't need to because she doesn't report to you. And nobody has chased anybody out of this, out of any place. I've been defending myself for 2 years, and I'm going to continue to defend myself and defend my positions. And the only person who's really lied on this council, Mary Parisian, has been you. And that lie happened last spring, I believe, when you said that you passed the character and fitness with a score of 93 or 97%.
97.
I called the state bar, and that is a lie. Character and fitness does not have a numerical score. So you lied to the public about the score. Maybe you got that on a different exam, but character and fitness does not have a scoring element. And I spoke with the bar today about that.
MPRE. That's exactly what it is.
That's
the
not
MPRE.
character and fitness.
You and I both know that is. It's Michigan Professional Responsibility.
It is not character and fitness,
You're
Mary.
an attorney. You know
Let's
this.
wrap this up.
Mary,
Jeez,
you lied.
Ridiculous.
That'll be enough. No. I'll make this as brief as I can, and we're going to cover the political spectrum in a whole here. I would like to first state that I will apologize to anyone that was insulted by the process or the questions from last Thursday. There's no excuse for my reaction. It certainly was not a good look and is regrettable. I think it's fair to say that I'm learning up here. I will use that as a learning experience. Mr. Richards is an elected official. He was elected by the voters of South Lyon. I will not censor Mr. Richards. Now, him and I are both going to use this as a learning experience, and hopefully we will move forward and be better for it. On that note, I'm going to try and close us with something at the other spectrum of the political spectrum, the fun stuff that comes along with this job. I got a letter this week from a student at Sayre Elementary. She's a fourth grader over there. It was actually addressed to all of us. Her name is Lily B. She had wrote us this letter in concern about the salt being harsh on plants and vegetation during the winter months, and was wondering if we would be willing to talk to our friends at the DPW to see if we could use more sand than salt. And so I wanted to thank Lily for this letter to all of us, and I will talk to our friends at the DPW and see if this is an option going forward. I'd also like to thank you for taking the time to write this letter to all of us. And on that, I will look for a motion to adjourn tonight.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Sanders.